Chapter 604. Chewing put the Rio back into the plastic bag and got on her bike. I didn't ask you to come today, so go do your work. Then Master, the matter about dealing with Voidless Realm that you mentioned? Jiu Yi shouted out hurriedly. Right now I don't have any confidence in my heart. Just a little girl from Voidless Realm is enough to intimidate everyone. Chu Ying waved her hand as she rode her bicycle. Do as you see fit. Looking at his master disappearing on the street, Jiu Yi was a bit stupefied. This master is the one that has the least pretentious amongst all of the masters, and he actually let me handle such a big matter. A Maybach stopped beside Lord Jiu, and a Moon-class elite quickly got off and opened the door for Lord Jiu. Lord Jiu thought to himself that his masters were all low-key, and he was sitting in such a luxurious car. Wasn't it a bit too much? It shouldn't be too much. One should know how to enjoy life. This master is actually working at Starbucks. This is really blinding my eyes. Meanwhile, inside Voidless Realm, Yi Hua and his two wives were preparing to sleep. Although all of them wanted to sleep together, Yi Hua didn't force them. If he really wanted to force them, it wouldn't be a problem for him to do so. However, the feeling of doing so wouldn't be too good. He had to make them be willing to do so first. Hugging on to the most beautiful and sexiest woman in the world, Yi Hua felt very good in his heart. Although he couldn't use his gun for real, it was still possible for him to have some fun. Qingya and Donghuang Baiji also wouldn't say anything about it. You have to be prepared. The Righteous Alliance and the Peace Association will not let this matter rest. The two wives who were sleeping at the side remained silent, and their faces were completely red. Seems like the feeling is starting to come. I'm asking you guys a question, why aren't you guys talking? Yi Hua asked puzzledly, then turned his head around to take a look. These two women obviously wanted to die, but they were still stubbornly holding on. What was the point? They were already an old couple, yet she was still shy. Is it comfortable? Yi Hua couldn't help but tease. Qingya and Donghuang Baiji felt very gloomy. The only thing they could do was to hold on to their husband's hand tightly and not let him act recklessly. Donghuang Baiji hurriedly changed the topic. If they were to really come this time, we wouldn't let them go either. Qingya, who was at the side, nodded her head. They have already killed their way to our doorstep. Could it be that we still have to endure silently? Yi Hua was very satisfied with the wives' attitude. It seems like the soft-heartedness in their hearts have already disappeared. Alright, this time we will show the world. If he dares to come to Voidless Realm, then he will not be able to return. Yi Hua shouted out lightly, and his eyes shone with bloodthirst. Since this is your choice, then I shall grant you death. Another month passed by very quickly. It was almost May Day, but the entire world seemed to have adapted to the new environment. There were more and more cultivators, while the Righteous Alliance and the Peace Association swelled day and night. Furthermore, an attack was also quietly breaking out. The two great powers had already decided to attack Voidless Realm. This was a piece of exciting news. If several 100,000 people were to attack Voidless Realm, they would definitely be able to flatten the entire Voidless Realm. Just thinking about it makes me feel great. I heard that there are a lot of treasures in Voidless Realm, and when the time comes, I will definitely be able to snatch a lot of treasures. In short, exterminating Voidless Realm would bring a lot of benefits. This was also a magnificent feat of exterminating a demon, and this was also a great act of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Everyone was getting restless, and they couldn't wait to kill everyone in Voidless Realm, plunder everything and burn everything down. Within Wang Debao's villa, Qing Tiandi was the same as usual. He was currently watching television, and in front of him was a bowl of braised beef instant noodles. The entire house was filled with the smell of instant noodles. Wang Debao and Bai Cixing were the same as well. They were very busy recently, and they had to make arrangements for all kinds of people. Suddenly, a sound rang out from the stairs. The three looked towards the stairs, and Feng Tian could be seen walking down. This was the first time he came down this month. Feng Tian could be seen to be completely dispirited. His face was filled with stubble, and his hair was not tidied up either. He was beaten up to the point where he could no longer take care of himself. Feng Tian slowly sat down and said in a low voice, "I'm hungry, everyone." Wang Debao hurriedly went to prepare instant noodles, then gave them to Feng Tian. Feng Tian picked up the bowl of instant noodles and said, "Give me another bowl." Feng Tian finished eating bowl after bowl of instant noodles. It was truly an endless cycle. After finishing eating, Feng Tian let out a sigh, then stood up and paused for a moment, then walked back upstairs. Everyone could still hear the sound of the bedroom door closing. Did he recover? Or is he still autistic? Qing Tiandi laughed, then drank a mouthful of soup. This is so fragrant. How are the preparations on your side? Qing Tiandi asked curiously. Bai Cixin's table manners were rather elegant. To be able to eat instant noodles to such an extent, she must be a woman with some skills. And everything has been arranged. 1 week later we will attack together with the people from the Peace Association. Bai Cixin said as she took out a tissue and wiped her mouth. Qing Tiandi laughed softly. Very good, you two also pay attention to your safety. After you go, come back immediately, don't stay for too long. The husband and wife naturally agreed. They didn't plan to stay for too long in the first place, and now that Qing Tiandi said such words, it could be seen just how terrifying Voidless Realm was. With the war around the corner, the two began to feel nervous. Of course they also felt guilty. After all, they were sending people to their deaths. That's hundreds of thousands of people, not just a few hundred. This is completely betraying their comrades. Just thinking about it makes one's hair stand up. On the other side, the aunt was currently packing up her son's clothes. Wuli, how long are you going to be away for this time? The aunt asked her son, who was in the living room. Wuli was currently making a phone call, and when he heard his mother's question, he covered his phone and shouted, I will be back in a week. After finished speaking, Wuli continued making phone calls. Seems like after that day Wuli had indeed changed a little. However, the aunt knew that her son wanted her to rope in that youngster, and that's why the aunt was trying to please the youngster. Even so, the aunt was still very happy. At the very least, her son was no longer the same as before. After packing up her son's clothes, the aunt took out a bag. Eat at home before you leave, the aunt said in a low voice, afraid that she would disturb her son's discussion. Wuli smiled and nodded his head. The aunt was very gratified as she walked into the kitchen to cook for her son. Mom, where did you put my toothpaste and toothbrush? Wuli asked loudly. The aunt who was cooking smiled and said, in the pocket beside it. Oh, I saw it. Very soon, 3 dishes and a soup were served to the table by the aunt. Wuli walked over from the sofa and cried out in surprise, wow, these are all my favorite dishes. Hearing that, the aunt felt very happy. She scooped a bowl of rice for her son and said, eat more. The aunt sat in front of her son. She didn't eat it all and just watched as her son wolfed down the food. Wuli went into a daze for a moment, then picked some food for his mother. Mom, why are you looking at me like that? Eat. Chapter 605. The mother and son enjoyed a different time. The auntie's eyes were filled with love and the smile on her face was so gentle. After quite a while, Wuli held on to his stomach. I'm bloated to death. Silly child, don't overeat. The auntie laughed and scolded. He was already an adult, but he was still acting like a child. Mom, your cooking is too delicious. Wuli wiped his mouth and chuckled. The auntie smiled gently and said, Mom will cook for you every day from now on. You have to come home often. Wuli seemed to be affected as well. For the first time he didn't object and even nodded. Standing up, Wuli grabbed his luggage and walked to the door. The middle-aged woman followed behind him, reluctant to part. Wuli changed his shoes and opened the door. Ali, be careful. Mom will be waiting for you at home, the auntie shouted worriedly. She felt a heavy feeling in her heart. Wuli turned around and smiled. Mom, I know. The woman nodded and watched her son walk out of the house. Wuli, who was dragging his suitcase, paused for a moment. The middle-aged woman looked at her son, who was standing still, and was also puzzled. Did you forget anything else? Wuli turned his head around and looked towards his mother, and discovered that his mother's sideburns had already turned white, and the wrinkles on her face had also increased. Wuli walked back and hugged his mother. Mom, thank you. If the aunt remembered correctly, this was the first time her son had hugged her like this. Tears instantly flowed from the corners of her eyes. Good boy. After hugging his mother tightly, Wuli walked out of the house without hesitation and closed the door. And just like that, the aunt watched as her son's figure disappeared before her eyes. She first stretched out her hand to grab onto him, but then put down her hand. In Voidless Realm, Donghuang Baiji had already received the news. In just 1 week, several 100,000 people would gather together and attack Voidless Realm. This news still caused the Empress to be dazed for quite a while. They really came. Yihua, are we really going to do this? Donghuang Baiji seemed to be a bit unable to bear to do this. After all, Those are the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Last time he had only killed a few hundred, but this time it was not this number. How many families would be destroyed? Yihua didn't have as many concerns as Donghuang Baiji. The enemies had already killed their way to the entrance, so how could he possibly welcome them respectfully? Indeed, they had to welcome him respectfully, and they had to welcome him respectfully with a butcher's knife. Right now, Qingye was much calmer than before. This sort of calmness was the same as Yihua's calmness. It seemed like Qingye didn't have any pity in her heart. Baiji, you are the mistress of Voidless Realm and there are thousands of people who are depending on you. Could it be that you are planning to surrender? Yihua asked in a low voice. The battle is right around the corner, and to actually say such stupid words. If I were to say this in front of those subordinates of mine, how low would the morale of my subordinates be? Donghuang Baiji hurriedly shook her head. Of course I won't surrender. Yihua said coldly. Seems like the incident back then didn't teach them a lesson at all. Do they really think that just by having more people they will be able to solve the problem? Dream on. Qingye tacitly agreed with her husband's words. If more people can solve the problem, then what is the point of having strong people? A mouthful of saliva from each of them was enough to drown an expert. Yihua, don't you think that this matter is a conspiracy? In actuality, Donghuang Baiji was also thinking about this problem. If I were to fall into someone else's scheme, I would appear to be very foolish. This time, Qingye agreed with Donghuang Baiji and said lightly, and on that night there wasn't a single person left alive. Hold up the world. Yihua said faintly. Qingye and Donghuang Baiji went into a slight daze. It's him? Yihua nodded his head, then took out a stick of cigarette and lit it up. It's very likely that it's him. He sure is an opponent with brains. Then Yihua, why didn't you just kill him? Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yihua went into a daze. If I kill him, what am I going to do? It wasn't easy for me to meet a worthy opponent. Of course I can't say such words out loud. If I say it out loud they will definitely force me to kill him. I couldn't find him, so I asked Brett to retreat. Yihua revealed a helpless look. After hearing that, Donghuang Baiji shook her head and said coquettishly, at such a crucial moment you... Qingye laughed lightly and did not say anything. All right now, everyone is looking at you, Donghuang Baiji's decision. Don't throw my face away. Yihua said gravely, then stood up and walked out of the room. In the past I have always been worried about Qingye. Now that Qingye is fine, Donghuang Baiji has become indecisive again. Hearing what Yihua said, Donghuang Baiji pouted her mouth. I feel a bit wronged. How would I dare to throw your face away? Qingye picked up the teacup and took a small sip. Baiji, don't you know that we are men? We want our face even if we die. I know, but I don't feel like I have lost my face. You make it sound like I have already lost my face. The Empress felt very wronged. I am even thinking of ways to help you gain face. Qingye walked to Donghuang Baiji's side and patted on Donghuang Baiji's shoulder. Yihua's temper is a bit big sometimes and his words are also very straightforward. Don't take it to heart. I know this fellow only knows how to bully us, and he even said that I have lost his face. Donghuang Baiji hugged onto Qingye and said. Alright, Yihua's words have indeed hurt Donghuang Baiji a bit. As a wife, losing her husband's face is a very serious matter. And what Yihua said just now caused Donghuang Baiji to feel very gloomy. Qingye smiled helplessly, then stroked Donghuang Baiji's hair. Alright, I will help you teach him a lesson. You have to teach him a lesson in front of me then. Alright, why have you become like Yen? Donghuang Baiji pinched onto Qingye petulantly. As a sister, you have to comfort my broken heart. Alright, Anfu. Then next time when I am bullied you have to do the same too. Qingye smiled tenderly. Sure. Fortunately, the two little fellows were not here. Otherwise, when they saw the two mothers like this, their jaws would have dropped to the ground. Did their mothers have such an operation? He had learned something new. The two women comforted each other in the room and Yihua went to leisure bar. As for what he was going to do, of course, it was to hold another mobilization meeting. He called all of his subordinates over for a meeting. This time even Air Ha and Floating Battle were present. Regarding the matter regarding Dou Fusher, Yihua was the one who agreed to Dou Fusher. As long as Dou Fusher was able to deal with Absolute Heaven and Brett, Yihua would accept Dou Fusher. Although the process was a little fierce, at least it was completed. As an honorable supreme he couldn't go back on his words, right? I hate deceiving people the most. As for that Yunlang, he had now become Yi Zizi's little brother. Wouldn't a subordinate's little brother be his own little brother's little brother? There was nothing he could do. This was Dou Fusher's first time participating in a meeting, so he was a little reserved. Of course, he was also very shocked. His mind was in a daze the entire time. So it turns out that there is someone above my big brother. There is someone above my big brother's big brother. Oh my God. How is this possible? Furthermore, I feel that I am very weak. I am standing at the very back of the line. Furthermore, there are so many beauties, so many handsome guys. My appearance is gone in an instant. I am so sad. I really want to cry. However, at the same time that he was shocked, Floating Battle was also very excited. So strong. This is a gathering of powerful individuals. Chapter 606. Yunlang, who was squatting beside Yi Zizi, also had the same feeling. He couldn't even sense the aura of these people. How powerful were they? They were so frightening that this husky wanted to whimper. However, being able to follow these powerful people made Yunlang feel very good. His silvery white tail kept wagging, making him look more and more like a husky. Subordinate. We pay our respects to his honor. Everyone shouted out in unison. Their imposing manner was extraordinary, as if they were going to go to war. What is called imposing manner? This is called imposing manner. Towards someone like Donghuang Baiji, it would only lower her imposing manner. Yi Hua raised his hand and everyone was pulled up by a formless power. Dou Fusher, who was standing at the back, was so excited that he started sweating. As expected, I have followed the right person. If I follow his honor, I will be able to eat and drink well, and furthermore I won't be bullied by anyone. To think that I, Dou Fusher, would be able to have such a day. Cool. Yi Hua first lit up a stick of cigarette, then said gravely, 1 week later there will be a small-scale battle. That's right. In Yi Hua's opinion, this kind of battle with several 100,000 people was only a small-scale battle, and the battle with Heaven's Mansion could only be counted as a medium-scale battle. True large-scale battles were still very rare. Subordinate is willing to sweep away all obstacles for your honor. Wei Chang was the first one to shout out loudly and kneel on the ground. Following Wei Chang's shout, everyone shouted out in unison, subordinates are willing to go through water and tread on fire for his honor. Yi Hua was very satisfied with his subordinate's attitude and said, the purpose of this meeting is not to discuss about this battle, but rather, it is to discuss about the outcome of the battle. Brett cupped his hands and said, Your Honor, subordinate believes that any kind of conspiracy is nothing but a paper tiger in your honor's eyes. Brett's words were pleasing to the main body's ears. Brett is right. I am naturally not afraid of those conspiracies. After receiving his honor's praise, Brett felt a bit more comfortable in his heart. I wonder if Zhu Tian has woken up yet. Yi Hua paused for a moment, then continued, however, I do not wish to use my strength to suppress the other party. If I were to do so, it would seem like I am bullying the other party. Everyone went into a daze for a moment, and soon after they shouted out in unison, Your honor is benevolent. Floating Battle wasn't used to this kind of rhythm. So this was benevolence. Seemed like he had to redefine benevolence. So, after this small-scale battle, no one knows what will happen. This sovereign is looking forward to it. Right after Yi Hua finished speaking, the subordinates shouted out once more, to be able to relieve his honor's tiredness, that is a supreme honor. As expected of a group of subordinates who were good at bootlicking. Their words were really crafty. Actually, it wasn't all bootlicking. For the people of the 7 deadly sins, this was a very normal thing. For example, Zhou Xian, Green and Red brothers. They had never come into contact with Zhou Xian in the past, so they mistook Zhou Xian's actions as bootlicking. Although this is only a small-scale battle, it is considered a large-scale battle here. I want to go all out this time to shock the enemy. As soon as they heard that everyone was going to move out, everyone was moved. There was a bloodthirst in their bones. The number of times that his honor requested for the entire army to move out wasn't a lot. The first time was at Ying family and the second time seemed to be against a deity. This might very well be the third time. However, compared to the second time that his honor requested for the entire army to move out, this time's army is quite a bit inferior. However, at the very least, being able to follow his honor and set out together with him made everyone very excited. Subordinates will obey his honor's command. Everyone shouted out, and their shouts nearly overturned the roof. The reason why I gathered all of you here is to let you all think about how to line up, how to tell that we are an unstoppable team. Even Yi Hua himself didn't know what to do. I don't want to use those pretentious methods that I used in the past anymore. I want to change my pretentious methods. However, this question stumped everyone because this question was very serious. Since his honor's request was so high, an ordinary plan definitely wouldn't be able to satisfy his honor's request. Furthermore, judging from the pretentious method that his honor used in Heaven's Mansion last time, this time's pretentious method definitely wouldn't be inferior to that time either. Looking at his subordinates remaining silent, Yi Hua asked gravely, "What is it? Do none of you have any good ideas? Do you all have to let me think of ideas every single time? If that is the case, what is the point of having you all?" Everyone turned pale with fright and hurriedly knelt down. Subordinates deserve to die. Subordinates are slow-witted. Get up after you have thought it through. Yi Hua said coldly. Other than knowing how to fight, what else do you know? I'm just like taking care of a child. Everyone remained silent. His honor's temper is a bit big. How could Yi Hua's temper not be big? Hugging the most beautiful woman in the world every single day, yet being unable to move, this kind of feeling is very sullen. Whoever hugs me will know. None of Yi Hua's subordinates answered because even if they answered, his honor wouldn't be satisfied. Therefore, remaining silent was the best choice. At most, I will just get scolded by his honor. Furthermore, with so many people scolding me at the same time, it wouldn't be too shameful. Your honor, about that. I know. Dou Fushi, who was kneeling at the back, suddenly raised his hand and said. Yi Hua signaled Dou Fushi to speak. Everyone shook their heads. Young man, you are truly too young, you don't understand his honor at all. Dou Fushi was still a bit nervous and he said while trembling with fear. His honor is able to pull out a small stool and sit in front of the army. What kind of aura would that be? When subordinate imagines that scene, I can't help but have the urge to worship his honor. After hearing that, everyone shook their heads. Small stool? Isn't this too degrading? During the last battle of Heaven Court, his honor stepped on Inferno Abyssal Dragon, and this time his honor is actually able to sit on a small stool. Young man, you really don't understand anything. However, after hearing that, Yi Hua sunk into deep thought. Small stool? Yi Hua couldn't help but imagine that kind of scene in his mind. I, the Supreme Overlord, am sitting in front of the army, on the most ordinary small stool, with a cigarette in my mouth, and a pair of eyes coldly staring at the army. Seems like this kind of scene isn't bad. In the past, I was already used to being high profile, so this time, getting a small stool is not bad either. Good. Well said. Yi Hua couldn't help but shout out. All of Yi Hua's subordinates had stupefied looks on their faces. They completely don't know what's good about this scene. Hearing his honor's praise, Dou Fushi hurriedly kneeled down and kowtowed to thank his honor. Being able to help his honor solve his problems is our duty as subordinates. All of Yi Hua's subordinates were furious. To actually let a newcomer steal their limelight. Motherfucker. Yun Lang rubbed his paw. In actuality, I wanted to say the same thing just now, just that I wasn't able to speak like a human, that's all. I was afraid that his honor wouldn't be able to understand me, so I decided to keep my opinion to myself. It's like this husky is rather smart. Yi Hua swept his gaze across all of Yi Hua's subordinates. Look at this Dou Fushi. It's only his first time attending a meeting and he already knows so much. All of you still have to work hard and learn from him. All of Yi Hua's subordinates were a bit envious of Dou Fushi. His honor has never praised anyone like this before, and furthermore he even said that he wants everyone to learn from him. Right now Dou Fushi was a bit giddy. These big shots are going to learn from me? I'm so excited. Chapter 607. This subordinate will bear this in mind. All the subordinates shouted respectfully. Yi Hua nodded his head. Next time don't disappoint me. Yes. With a stern look on his face, Yi Hua returned to Voidless Realm first, leaving behind his subordinates. When Dou Fushi saw that his honor had left just like that, he was a little disappointed. He thought that his honor would look for him alone to talk to him. Right when Yi Hua was fantasizing, he suddenly discovered that there were a lot of gazes that were looking at him, and those were gazes that harbored evil intentions. Lai Gu walked over with a stern face, looked at Dou Fushi and said, "Newcomer, you really don't know the rules." Dou Fushi swallowed his saliva, and when he saw everyone's ferocious gazes he became terrified. "Big brother. I really don't know the rules." Yi Zizi snorted. "You don't know the rules, yet you're talking nonsense." Dou Fushi's scalp went numb. He seemed to have figured out what was going on. It seems like I have stolen the limelight and I even received his honor's praise, causing these big brothers and big sisters to be jealous. This trick is too deep. I want to go back to the village. Big brother. Big sister. Let me explain. Dou Fushi felt that he still had a chance. Zhou Xian snorted. Who is your big sister? Am I that old? Floating world. Dou Fushi could be seen slowly squatting down and saying weakly, "Don't hit my face." Lai Gu snorted coldly, "Everyone attack. Let the newcomer know what the rules are." Dou Fushi's miserable screams rang out in the hall. As your big brother I am also teaching you. Endure it a bit more. Death Mage let out a cackling sound. I will properly learn from you. Zhou Xian's small fist also descended. I'll learn from you properly. Tang Wei also gave him a small punch. I also want to learn. Wei Chong also came over and gave a punch. After a long while, Dou Fushi covered his face and said, "You guys didn't keep your word. You said that you wouldn't slap my face." Dou Fushi's face was swollen. It was truly tragic. This was the result of a newbie who didn't know any better. Yun Lang wagged his tail and held his breath. Then he raised his head and walked past arrogantly. You're also a newcomer, so why do you have to be so high profile? Look at me, Yun Lang. I'm acting like a dog with my tail between my legs. In the end he was still too young. Blood Demon also shook his head and looked at himself. Only by doing things in a down-to-earth manner and behaving honestly would he be able to gain everyone's approval. Randomly showing off would only lead to death. Dou Fushi wanted to cry but no tears came out. Even a dog had come to mock him. In the future he wouldn't dare to speak carelessly anymore. The farce ended just like that, allowing Dou Fushi to experience the warmth of a team. Look at how low profile the Green and Red brothers were when they first entered the team. Both of them stood at the side and didn't speak at all, and only answered when his honor asked them about it. And for this Dou Fushi to take the initiative to answer his honor's question, it meant that he was flaunting his own brain. This Dou Fushi was the target of everyone's attack. We all have no brains. What do you need brains for? Quickly dispel your crazy idea. When Yi Hua returned to Voidless Realm, he might not know that his subordinates were currently bullying the newcomer. Walking into the back of the luxurious palace, Donghuang Baiji could be seen teaching her daughter how to write calligraphy, and Yi Yan was also practicing by the side. Mom, look, it's a picture of a chick pecking rice. Yi Yan took out his masterpiece and showed it to her. Xianxia, who was sitting at the table and drinking tea, immediately spat out the tea she was drinking. She widened her eyebrows and said, "Yan, I'll let you practice writing. Why are you drawing?" Yi Yan pouted. She was a little sad that her work was not praised by her mother. Not bad. Yi Hua walked into the room and said faintly. Yi Yan immediately beamed and shouted with a smile, "Daddy." Yi Hua rubbed onto his son's little head. Children at this age must be praised, if not, it would be very easy for them to be discouraged. When Donghuang Baiji saw that her husband had returned, she immediately walked away and sat beside Donghuang Baiji. Mom will bring you two out to play. Xianxia naturally knew that. Right now, Xianxia brought the two little fellows out and didn't want to disturb them. Hearing that they could finally play, Donghuang Li and Yi Yan were very happy. After all, they are still children, so why wouldn't they want to play? When Xianxia passed by Yi Hua, she said in a low voice, You made Baiji angry, coax her properly." Yi Hua was completely confused. When did I provoke the Empress? I don't have any impression at all. However, when he looked at Donghuang Baiji, she seemed to be angry. Yi Hua slowly walked to the side of the Empress and wanted to stroke onto the Empress's beautiful hair. Who knew that Donghuang Baiji would snort, "Don't touch me, I'm making you lose face." Right now Yi Hua finally understood. So it turns out that it was my unintentional words that provoked the Empress. How could you make me lose face? Yi Hua laughed lightly. What's the difference between this Empress and a child? She has the temper of a child. In any case, I have already made you lose face. In the future you don't have to care about me anymore. The Empress raised her head and had an expression that seemed to say that she wants me to fend for myself. Right now Yi Hua was quite skilled in coaxing women. He directly carried the angry Empress and sat down on the ground. Afterward, Yi Hua stretched out his hand and hooked onto the Empress's chin, then said faintly, "Look at my wife's appearance. Which woman in this world would have such an appearance?" Humph, Donghuang Baiji snorted and dodged away. From her tone and actions, it seemed that she had gotten a little better. "Baiji, for a woman like you to go and fight anywhere, It would mean that you are giving me face. Yi Hua once again stretched out his hand and stroked onto the Empress's cherry lips. The Empress's cherry lips were very soft. Dong Huang Baiji's originally angry face immediately collapsed. Then why did you say that I made you lose face? Dong Huang Baiji used her small fists and pounded onto her chest. Yi Hua said gravely, Baiji, you must be decisive when killing. Hesitation isn't like your style. Dong Huang Baiji silently nodded her head. Look at your frowning face, you don't look like an empress at all. Isn't this all because I was angered by you? It's all your fault. Alright, blame me. Since her husband had already given in, Dong Huang Baiji was no longer angry and snuggled into her husband's embrace. Yi Hua said lightly, I have already arranged everything for this matter. I will deal with it myself so that you won't feel bad about it again. I can do it. Yi Hua's gaze became focused as he shouted out lightly, all right then. This time, all of us will move out and let everyone experience what I'm capable of. Who dared to provoke my woman? How did they end up? Hearing her husband's bold words, Dong Huang Baiji felt as if she had eaten honey. I found a good man. This is great. That's why Yi Hua's change is still very big. In the past he would often scold people and coax his wife, but now look at how good he is at coaxing his wife. A few minutes ago, Dong Huang Baiji was still panting with anger, but a few minutes later, Tsk. Look at her expression, it seems like she wants to roll on the bed with me, but I won't allow her to do so. If I allow you to scram just because you want to scram, where would my dignity be? Dong Huang Baiji, who was in bliss, said tenderly, hubby, I love you. Chapter 608. Time passed by and very quickly a week passed by. Today was April 28th, the weather was clear, and it was also the day when the Peace Association and Justice Alliance launched their attack. Both sides sent out 150,000 people, and for a total of 300,000 people. Furthermore, they even gave themselves a temporary name, Sky Law. As the name implied, they were here to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Such a scale was unprecedented and everyone was excited, looking forward to the moment when they trampled on Voidless Realm. Meanwhile, inside Voidless Realm, Yi Hua's underlings all appeared, and even the blood demon who was cleaning the place was present. Of course, Dou Fushi was also present. The bruise on his face had yet to disappear and he stood at the back, not daring to speak anymore. Just now Yi Hua also asked Dou Fushi curiously, what happened to his face? How could Dou Fushi dare to answer truthfully, and thus said that he fell down. This caused Yi Hua to laugh lightly. To be able to fall to such a state, Dou Fushi is indeed a talent. After Xianxia and Dong Huang Baiji greeted Yi Hua and his underlings, they didn't say anything. It will be fine if they just stand beside their husband later. Dong Huang Li and Yi Yan were also standing at the side. The two little fellows were also meticulously dressed up by their mother today, so they mustn't lose face. The two little fellows were already impatient to go on stage, and they looked up at their father's broad back view. Yi Yan was even thinking in his heart, I must definitely become a man like my father in the future. Wait for my order. Yi Hua shouted out while holding onto a bamboo stool. Yes. Everyone shouted out gravely. After finished speaking, Yi Hua passed through the barrier with the bamboo stool. Meanwhile, Voidless Realm didn't have any signs of preparing for war, and everyone was still living their lives as usual. Of course, such a big matter still has to be paid attention to. After all, today is the glory that belongs to Voidless Realm. Yi Hua walked out of the barrier and arrived at the desert outside. He placed the bamboo stool on the ground, then sat down, took out a cigarette and lit it up. Interesting, I have never been so low-key before. It seems like it is quite interesting to be low-key once in a while. Right now, I am just waiting for those people to come over. Meanwhile, at the border of the desert, a large army of 300,000 people had already gathered. The ones leading the army were naturally the two leaders, Bai Cixin and Zhou Yi. In actuality, the two of them knew that those people were here to die, but they still couldn't bear to do so. Ninth Lord, it's getting late, Bai Cixin said in a sweet voice. Zhou Yi nodded his head. This land of yellow sand is currently a forbidden area, and I heard that Voidless Realm is located at the center of the land of yellow sand. We have to cross this land of yellow sand first. Wang Debao laughed and said, no matter how dangerous it is, there are 300,000 people here and they are all moon-class elites. We are not afraid of anyone. Lord Jiu chuckled but did not say anything. There must be a reason why this land of yellow sand was called a forbidden zone. He looked at the 300,000 people behind him. Their aura was soaring to the heavens and their killing intent was awe-inspiring. In the front row there were even people carrying Tian Fa's flag. How imposing! Let's go. Lord Zhou shouted. 300,000 people stepped onto this path of no return, and death was quietly descending upon them. However, in their minds, they were only thinking about the treasures within Voidless Realm. In the group there was a familiar figure. That was Wu Li. This time he was even a squad leader in charge of 100 people. It was a disguised promotion. Captain Wu, what kind of treasures do you think are inside Voidless Realm? One of the subordinates at the side asked curiously. Wu Li laughed lightly. Don't worry, if there are any benefits, we will naturally share them with us. That's right, after we get our share of the money I will buy a villa for my parents and a golden retriever so that they can live a good life. A look of longing appeared on the corner of the subordinate's mouth, and it seemed like he was already fantasizing about his triumphant return. In Wu Li's mind, his mother who had white hair on her temples appeared as well. When I go back to Voidless Realm this time, I will properly accompany my parents and think about the stupid things I did in the past. I will properly apologize to my mother. Just as Wu Li was in deep thought, the yellow sand beneath his feet suddenly moved. A lot of people felt that the yellow sand on the ground was moving. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, there was a loud bang. A huge blood-red scorpion rushed out from the yellow sand, and in an instant, it swallowed dozens of people. The huge impact sent Wu Li flying, and the subordinate who was fantasizing about buying a big house for his parents was already swallowed by the scorpion. The sudden appearance of the scorpion messed up the entire formation. Bai Cixin had also taken this situation into consideration and she shouted out, "Get ready for battle." 300,000 people took out their weapons in unison, and in the entire formation, dozens of huge scorpions rushed out. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin frowned. It wasn't that they didn't consider this situation, but the number of scorpions was a bit too much. In just an instant it was estimated that more than 100 people died. Lord Zhou shouted coldly, "What are you all standing there for? Go." As the higher-ups entered the battlefield, the situation quickly stabilized, and it was no longer as messy as before. However, the huge scorpions' defense was extraordinarily terrifying, especially their tails, and with a single sweep, dozens of people would die. There was no other way, the formation was too densely packed. Luckily, there were quite a lot of ancient godly items on both sides, and after the death of more than 10,000 people, they finally killed these dozens of huge scorpions. The huge scorpions' bodies were full of treasures, and their hard outer shell could be used as armor, and their incomparably hard scorpion tail could be used as a top-notch spiritual tool. Although more than 10,000 people died, it still couldn't stop the chaos. The dozens of huge scorpions were all stripped clean, and everyone obtained their first harvest and they seemed very excited. It was indeed the right choice to form a group and come to this desert, even if more than 10,000 people died in the battle just now. Bai Cixin ordered the team to recuperate, increase their vigilance and continue their journey in 10 minutes. Right now Wu Li was already injured and a deep cut was made on his left arm. Fortunately he had prepared healing medicine and with the help of magic he felt much better. However he, the team leader, no longer had anyone to give orders to. Just now, that huge scorpion appeared at his side and other than himself the other 100 people in the team were all killed. This caused Wu Li's heart to sink. I haven't even seen what Voidless Realm looks like, and more than 10,000 people have already died. And this is merely the first wave. A man could be seen handing out a pen and paper, and everyone was stupefied as they held onto the pen and paper. "What are you doing?" Wu Li asked. The man saw that Wu Li's armband was that of a team leader, and thus he said very respectfully, "Team leader, this is used to write a will." After finished speaking, the man continued handing out the pen and paper. In actuality, this was also what Bai Cixin wanted. Even if they were to die, they should at least send a will to their family. Wu Li's hand that was covered in blood tightly held onto the white paper, and his hand was trembling a bit. Looking at the people around him, the excitement he had just a moment ago was no longer there. The 10,000 people who died didn't even have the time to write a will. Although they obtained some treasures, the price they paid was too tragic. Wu Li took a deep breath. "It's impossible for me to become a deserter." Picking up the pen, Wu Li began writing on the white paper. Chapter 609. Wu Li wrote down all of the words that he wanted to say, his longing and shame towards his mother. If there is a next life, I will definitely accompany you by your side. 5 minutes later, the man began to collect the corpses again. However, there were a lot of people who expressed their disdain. How can I possibly die? What a joke. Wu Li passed his will to the man and said gravely, I'll be counting on you. The man nodded his head gravely. 10 minutes passed by very quickly, and the huge group began moving forward once again. Due to the lesson that they received just now, they spread out a lot and were not as concentrated as before. However, not even tens of minutes later, a whirlpool suddenly appeared and instantly devoured over 1,000 people. A lot of people were sucked into the whirlpool and miserable screams could be heard. Those who could fly all flew high up into the sky and looked at the messy group below them. Spread out. Spread out. Facing such a whirlpool, there seemed to be nothing they could do. A huge centipede could be seen rushing out from the bottom of the sand. Those densely packed legs made everyone's body shiver, and its long tentacles seemed to be carrying along a strange spiritual energy fluctuation. What the heck? Is this God of Touch? Big brother, what is God of Touch? Have you played Legend of Touch before? You don't even know what God of Touch is. I have never played it before. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of spiritual energy fluctuation could be seen coming out from the surroundings once again. Another 2 huge whirlpools could be seen appearing and immediately devouring countless people's lives. 2 centipedes that brought along a terrifying aura burst out from the ground. Furthermore, tens of giant scorpions also appeared at the same time. Everyone subconsciously swallowed their saliva. This is going to be a tough battle. Bai Cixin and Zhou Yi, who were in the sky, tightly wrinkled their brows. This time we are bringing people to fight against Voidless Realm. And not to fight against these mutated animals. However, if we don't kill these animals, how are we going to reach Voidless Realm's entrance? These monsters seem to be Voidless Realm's guardians, obstructing our path. Fight! Bai Cixin shouted out, and a terrifying pressure flashed across the ancient godly item in her hand as her delicate body charged towards the ground. Zhou Yi let out a breath, then condensed a hammer in his hand. When the hammer appeared, the entire sky darkened for a moment as lightning struck down. Thick lightning gathered on Zhou Ye's hammer, and Zhou Ye's entire body was like a god of lightning as he shouted out loudly. The hammer immediately released a dazzling light, and the huge lightning seemed to be able to penetrate everything in the world. The lightning struck the centipede's body. One could see with the naked eye that the electricity on the centipede's body was destroying it. In an instant, the centipede lost its life and collapsed. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned for a moment before bursts of cheers erupted. As expected of the president of the Peace Association, he was able to kill a centipede in one hit. The morale of the entire team was greatly boosted by Lord Jiu's attack. They attacked without any regard for their lives. Lord Jiu could only use this move once. It would be great if he could use it infinitely. Everyone joined the chaotic battle. The remaining 2 centipedes were very tenacious. With every strike, hundreds of people would die. There was also the threat of the giant scorpion beside them. The casualties were disastrous. After an hour of hard work, they finally defeated these mutated animals. However, the losses had increased from 10,000 to 100,000. In just an hour, a total of 100,000 people were lying in the yellow sand. Furthermore, they didn't even get to see what Voidless Realm looked like. But now Bai Cixin, Wang Debao and Lord Jiu were all wounded. This place was really too scary. They were basically here to die. The problem was, these heads were not given to Voidless Realm. They were given to these mutated animals. Right now Wu Li was lying on a pile of sand, and blood was flowing out from his mouth non-stop. Because he was a squad leader, there were paramedics beside him. However, right now both of Wu Li's legs were already gone. The paramedics inspected Wu Li's legs, then shook their heads. There was nothing they could do. Wu Li's injuries were too heavy. Just as the paramedics were preparing to leave and save the others, Wu Li stretched out his hand and grabbed onto one of the paramedics, then said with all of his strength, "Please tell my mother that I have let her down." Wu Li looked at the paramedics. The paramedics tightly wrinkled his brows and nodded his head heavily. Seeing that the paramedics nodded their head, Wu Li seemed to have lost all of his strength. The hand that was grabbing onto the paramedics fell down as well. Wu Li looked towards the sky, and in the sky his mother's warm smile could be seen. The corner of Wu Li's mouth slightly rose, and he seemed to have returned back to his mother's embrace. The paramedics let out a breath, then stretched out his hand and wiped Wu Li's eyes. However, countless corpses were already lying all around, and the yellow sand had already become a sea of blood. Extremely terrifying. When Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin saw this scene, their hearts felt very heavy. They came here with a mission. If they didn't complete it, Wang Debao held onto the blood-stained longsword tightly and muttered, 110,000. Gone just like that. Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin became silent. All of this was just to frame Voidless Realm. Looking at the entire yellow sand, skeletons were everywhere, and the sight was too horrible to look at. Bai Cixin thought inwardly, is all of this really worth it? Just to frame Voidless Realm with a groundless crime. The remaining 190,000 people were currently collecting the spoils of war. That giant centipede's entire body was filled with treasures. However, there were still some people who were flipping over the corpses, seemingly looking for their brothers or other people. There were even some people who were hugging onto the corpses and wailing loudly. Bai Cixin looked towards the endless yellow sand. Where exactly is this Voidless Realm? Why can't I see it yet? However, right now Yihua was still waiting. He was currently smoking cigarette after cigarette, and the ground was filled with cigarette butts. Why is he still not here yet? Is he still coming or not? I have already waited for more than an hour, and not even a single strand of hair can be seen. However, there is a layer of cigarette butts on the ground. I feel a bit awkward. My wives and subordinates are all waiting for me to come out. However, for these 190,000 people to walk all the way to where Yihua was, I reckon that they would still need half a day's time. However, if they were to really walk all the way to where Yihua was, how many of them would really be left? Most probably before they could even see Yihua's face, they would all die in this yellow sand. Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin once again gathered 190,000 people and prepared to set off. However, among them there were already a lot of people who wanted to go back. However, when they thought about what to do if they were to bump into those things on the way back, they would definitely die. Right now there was still a trace of hope for them to advance forward, but if they were to retreat, it would only be a path of death. If they were able to make a new choice, it was reckoned that a lot of people wouldn't have come to this yellow sand. Although treasures were important, their lives were more important. As the army continued to advance forward, everyone raised their vigilance and paid attention to their surroundings. If a whirlpool appeared, they would have to immediately leave. There were also those giant scorpions that suddenly appeared, and there were even more unknown life forms. However, in less than 10 minutes, a situation occurred once again. This kind of situation caused everyone to despair. Chapter 6:10. This is simply not giving us a way out. The atmosphere of despair spread throughout the entire team. Looking at the gigantic creatures in front of them, a deep sense of powerlessness emerged within the team. Even Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin felt a sense of despair. This boundless land of yellow sand was actually this terrifying. This is something unexpected. And they want to flatten Voidless Realm? We don't even know where Voidless Realm is. This is simply a joke. What should we do? There are so many of them. Everyone in the team revealed out a frightened expression as they muttered. Run. How are we going to run? We are all surrounded. Some martial artists who were capable of flying were no longer able to endure this kind of fear and began flying towards the sky to escape. Many people saw this situation and their morale fell to the lowest point. There are actually people who are escaping. There are at least over 10,000 of them. Even the sky was covered by a patch of darkness. However, right at this moment, the ground seemed to be covered by something, and everyone couldn't help but raise their head to look. Dozens of gigantic vultures covered the entire sky, and with a ferocious aura, the vultures flew towards the 10,000 people. Facing against dozens of vultures, the 10,000 people were instantly annihilated, and almost all of them were swallowed alive by the vultures in the sky. Everyone's expression froze. This is simply a team that is capable of both land, sea and air. Right now, the control of the sky and ground is completely in the hands of the enemy. Bai Cixin and Zhou Yi were in despair. With their strength, it is impossible for them to charge out of the encirclement. The battle prowess of the dozens of vultures is too terrifying. Thankfully, after the vultures ate over 10,000 people in the sky, they left and didn't plan to join the battle. This made everyone let out a breath of relief. Zhou Yi and Bai Cixin took a look at each other, and both of them seemed to be very helpless. Wife, let's fight. Wang Debao shouted out. Bai Cixin nodded her head and shouted out, everyone listen up, there is already no way back for us. We can only fight to the end for peace. For justice. Bai Cixin raised the ancient godly item in her hand high up, and the might that was emitted from the ancient godly item made the remaining 180,000 people reveal a gaze filled with fighting spirit. Ancient godly items are good things, they are able to boost morale. Jiu Yi and Wang Debao, who were at the side, also raised the ancient godly item in their hands, and a majestic spiritual pressure swept across the ground, causing all of the mutated animals in the surroundings to tremble. Kill! Lord Jiu shouted and took the lead to rush out. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin shouted coldly and rushed down without any hesitation. In this situation they couldn't care less. They would bring as many as they could back with them. The battle was on the verge of breaking out and the rate of casualties was dropping by the second. It was chilling. Meanwhile, outside of Voidless Realm's barrier, Yi Hua had a stern look on his face, and there was already a pile of cigarette butts beneath his feet. This group of people couldn't have gotten lost, right? If you can't even find the entrance of Voidless Realm, then what are you two even coming here for? The people who were standing inside the barrier were curious. It has already been a few hours. Even if His Honor were to walk, His Honor should have already arrived, right? Although I am unable to see His Honor's expression, judging from those cigarette butts, His Honor's expression should be very bad. Sister, are those bad guys not coming? Yi Yan tugged at the corner of his sister's clothes. Dong Huangli held on to her little brother's hand. We should be arriving soon, right? Could it be that they're asleep? Yi Yan gasped and pursed his lips. He was originally very excited, but after waiting for so long he still did not appear. He even wanted to sleep. Dong Huangli rubbed onto her little brother's head. I don't understand either. All of Yi Hua's subordinates were also a bit gloomy. Just what is going on with this group of people? It can't be that they are preparing to stand His Honor up, right? If that's the case, your guts are rather big. How is this standing up? Those people are currently fighting for their lives. Right now the battlefield was already too horrible to look at. The number of people that were killed had directly dropped to 100,000. It had only been a few hours and yet 200,000 people had already disappeared. This was a heavy blow that caused everyone to be unable to breathe. Furthermore, right now the battle had yet to stop and the number of people that were killed was still continuously rising. These mutated beasts are truly terrifying. Another hour passed by, and the scene was already unbearable to look at. Out of the originally majestic army, only a measly 30,000 people remained. All of the others had died in battle. What kind of concept was this? 270,000 people were to be left behind in this land of yellow sand forever. The remaining 30,000 people stood blankly on the spot, and there weren't even a few that went to collect the spoils of war, because they didn't even know if they would be able to return or not. Jiu Yi, Bai Cixin and Wang Debao were already heavily injured, and they were currently gasping for breath. If there was no rescue, right now even they probably wouldn't be able to escape. Jiu Yi sat paralyzed on a pile of bloody sand, gasping for breath with a heavy gaze. Wang Debao was currently bandaging his wife's wounds. Looking at the wounds on her delicate skin, he felt a pang in his heart. Bai Cixin also bandaged her husband's wounds and she said in a low voice, Debao, maybe I should have listened to you before and not participated in this conflict. Wang Debao was stunned for a moment, then he immediately smiled and said, Honey, listen to what you said. Whatever you do, I will support you. Debao, thank you. All these years you've taken a lot of blame for me. As your wife, I'm really not responsible. Wang Debao gently hugged his wife. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. We won't die. Debao, if we can survive, let's have children, Bai Cixin said softly as she nestled in her husband's arms. After going through so many things, she finally realized that it was a blessing to be able to talk peacefully. Wang Debao was overjoyed. After being married for so many years, Bai Cixin had never wanted children, because the birth of a child would disrupt her rhythm of becoming stronger. However, after hearing his wife's words, he was instantly excited. Okay, when this is over, we'll go home and have children. People would sigh with emotion, especially when their lives were in danger. Some things would be too late for regrets. However, if they survived a disaster, they might be able to comprehend it, but they might also be the same as before. What he said now was just some yearning. Let's return. Jiu Yi, who was at the side, said gravely. The remaining 30,000 people were basically unable to do anything, let alone trample on Voidless Realm. All of them were trampled by those mutated animals. Bai Cixin and Wang Debao did not object. It was meaningless for them to continue advancing now. They would only be wiped out. Lord Zhou stood up and shouted, "Retreat!" The 30,000 people were taken aback for a moment before they let out an excited roar. It was as if they had won a battle and could finally retreat. They would never come back again. They would never come back to this godforsaken place even if they were beaten to death. The 30,000 people once again harvested the corpses of the mutated animals. They were excited at the thought that they could all be sold for money when they returned. Damn it, I can't even fit it in anymore. However, just as everyone was retreating, there was a sudden movement in the sky. Chapter 6:11. Everyone was attracted by the white light and didn't notice that their boss had disappeared. What is this thing? Can't be another terrifying monster, right? It doesn't seem like it. I feel like there is a figure inside. Human. Everyone exchanged words with each other. However, everyone took out the weapons in their hands in case something unexpected happened. After all, they were already terrified. When the white light disappeared, the 30,000 men gulped and their eyes were filled with amazement. Standing on the sand dune was a woman. This woman was wearing a white robe and her long hair hung down to her shoulders. Her eyebrows were like the crescent moon, and her eyes were like cold stars. On her forehead, there was a plum blossom mark, which added to her cold and elegant aura. Her face alone was already extremely beautiful. Not to mention her arrogant figure, it was enough to make people drool. Everyone seemed to have forgotten about the previous battle as they stared at the woman who had suddenly appeared. The aura she exuded was like that of a high and mighty fairy. Li Hun clenched her fists and slowly closed her eyes. In his heart he muttered, "Is this a rebirth? Seems like I have really revived. Heart of loyalty. Qinjing. You two bastards actually joined hands to kill me. I will settle this score with you slowly. Danexen, I was blind to fall in love with you. Bastard." Everyone realized that there was something wrong with this woman's aura. The entire surface of the sand was shaking, and a terrifying resentment was emitted from the woman's body. Li Hun abruptly opened her bloodshot eyes and shouted, "Not a single man is a good man. Go to hell." Soul receding Soul raised his hands, and a terrifying spirit pressure appeared in his palms. Thousand crimson smoke. The red spiritual energy condensed in his palms immediately pounced toward the 30,000 people present. Everyone cursed out loud. Why did women like to say this? Who the **CK provoked you? Who should you go and find? Smells so good. It's quite fragrant. Feels like Chanel No. 5. A strange fragrance drifted among the 30,000 people. Everyone's eyes became dazed and even intoxicated. Holy shit. The giant scorpion is here again. Centipede. Centipede. Serpent. Faster thief. The 30,000 players immediately started attacking each other. In their eyes, their opponents were those terrifying mutated animals. This was somewhat similar to Absolute Heaven's hypnosis. However, Soul Detachment's hypnosis was not hypnosis. It was an illusion. Looking at the 30,000 men gradually falling at her feet, Soul leaving Soul felt refreshed both physically and mentally, and her delicate body disappeared on the spot. A light breeze blew past and 300,000 Sky Wrath disappeared just like that. Even the last 30,000 Sky Wrath had fallen. As the wind howled, the corpses were gradually covered or eaten by animals that rushed over. Everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. However, the cigarette butts beneath Yi Hua's feet were already piled up. In the end, Donghuang Baiji still walked out and said tenderly, "Yihua, don't wait anymore, I reckon that he won't be coming." Yi Hua was angered to the point that the hand that was holding the cigarette was trembling. "I have even thought of my lines and you guys actually stood me up. Motherf***ker. You were making fun of me." In actuality, Yi Hua didn't intentionally go and feel the spiritual energy fluctuation, and was just waiting leisurely, not knowing what was going on. "Lai Gu. Let's go and take a look at where those people are." Yi Hua threw away the cigarette butt in his hand and said anxiously. Lai Gu stepped out of the barrier, seemingly wanting to change back to his original form. Seeing Lai Gu's action, Wei Chong immediately knew what Lai Gu wanted to do and coughed hurriedly. Lai Gu nearly forgot that his honor's wife had seen my original form before. If I were to reveal my original form right now, his honor would definitely stew me. In actuality, Lai Gu was just trying to act cool earlier and something almost happened to him. This isn't something that can be solved by kneeling on a keyboard. Lai Gu disappeared on the spot and not long later he returned. Standing in front of Yi Hua, Lai Gu said respectfully, "Your Honor, they are all dead." Yi Hua, Motherf *Ker. Didn't we agree to attack Voidless Realm? All of them actually died on the way here. Do you guys even have any sincerity? Sure enough, humans are a bunch of untrustworthy people, causing me to sit here foolishly for a few hours, and even smoked a few packs of cigarettes. Yi Hua slowly stood up, patted off the cigarette ash on his body, then walked into the barrier. While looking at his subordinates, he said gravely, "Whose *king idea was this? To make me sit outside and get blown by the wind for a few hours?" Qingye said helplessly, "Yi Hua, don't curse in front of a child." All of Yi Hua's subordinates immediately pointed their fingers at Dou Fushi. Dou Fushi had a stupefied look on his face. "Why is it my fault again?" Yi Hua said gravely, "Seems like newbies need to be taught properly." All of Dou Fushi's subordinates revealed out an evil smile, then shouted out, "Subordinate obeys." Dou Fushi felt as if he was struck by lightning. "Your Honor, just a few days ago you said that I did a good job and the suggestion that you gave me was great. Why did it become like this?" "It really isn't my fault, Your Honor, save me." Yi Hua brought along his wife and son and left. With a sinister smile on his face, Lai Gu looked at Dou Fushi and said, "Dou Fushi, this is the result of being in the limelight." Yi Zizi pouted her mouth, sighed, "This should be the result of recklessly coming up with ideas. It's fine if Your Honor is satisfied, if not, then you're finished." Brett laughed lightly. "It seems like my mood has become much better recently, if not I wouldn't be laughing." Zishan smiled sweetly. "Fushi, little friend, a loose tongue causes trouble, you have to be more careful in the future." Only now did Dou Fushi understand a principle. If His Honor asks a question, if you don't have 100% confidence in answering, don't ever answer. If not, you will be out of luck. His Honor is simply temperamental. "Big brother, big sister, be gentler, don't hit my face, I still haven't recovered from the last time." Dou Fushi obediently held onto his head and squatted down. Sun Fong laughed lightly, "Just because you called me big sister, I'll just pat your head." This time Dou Fushi learned his lesson. Last time he called me big brother and big sister, but now he called me big brother and big sister. Being in this team is like training one's mind. Yun Lang raised his arrogant head, seemingly saying, "You are truly too young, you dare to say anything." After this incident, Dou Fushi no longer dared to recklessly bring up any suggestions. "When I patted Colonel Jin's head, I actually got lightly brushed by Erha's tail. Damn it, sooner or later I will stew you into a bowl of dog meat soup and let you show off." Right now in Wang Debao's villa, the three people who disappeared were currently sitting on the sofa and eating instant noodles while looking at if you are the one with a smile on the corner of their mouths, as if they didn't care about anything at all. After drinking the soup, Qing Tiandi placed down the instant noodles in his hand, then took out a napkin and wiped his mouth, then said, "We are in the same group, there's no need to be restrained." "In the same group?" Bai Cixin asked confusedly. Jiu Yi knew about it, which was why he didn't say anything. Chapter 6:12. Bai Cixin thought that the Peace Association was a competitor, but she didn't expect that the Peace Association was just a chess piece in Qing Tian's hands. "Big brother Qing, why did you suddenly pull us back?" Wang Debao asked curiously. "Oh, a very powerful person came. If I didn't pull you guys back, you guys would probably die." Qing Tian folded the tissue and threw it into the trash can. Bai Cixin said confusedly, "A powerful person. That's what I said last time." Qing Tian laughed lightly. Bai Cixin and Wang Debao turned pale with fright. Qing Tian did say that last time, but he also said that he was joking. How did it become real? Looking at the shocked look on everyone's faces, Qing Tian said faintly, "You guys have completed the mission well this time. Just say that Voidless Realm took those 300,000 heads. In any case, there are no survivors. You guys can say whatever you want." The corner of Jiu Ye's mouth twitched. What a vicious person, making something out of nothing. Bai Cixin became silent, because she originally wanted to live a good life with her husband after this matter is over. Wang Debao was also waiting for his wife's decision. As long as his wife says to withdraw, he will definitely not turn back. But right now Bai Cixin was worried about Qing Tian. This temperamental man, I know too much about her and her husband, so how could he possibly let us go? It is normal for him to kill us to silence us. Then what should we do next? Bai Cixin let out a sigh of relief and asked. Wang Debao, who was at the side, revealed a disappointed look. My wife is still not willing to let go. Is power really that tempting? This time Wang Debao misunderstood his wife. Bai Cixin didn't want her and her husband to be silenced. Qing Tian leaned on the sofa and laughed. You guys just have to send out the news. You don't have to worry about anything else. Yes. Jiu Yi replied respectfully. Yes. Bai Cixin could only agree, and Wang Debao nodded his head. Since my wife has made a decision again, I have to help her too. Within Voidless Realm, the two little fellows were originally unhappy, but they quickly recovered and continued to play. However, as a supreme overlord, Yi Hua was unable to recover from his shock. Originally, today was supposed to be a good day. Everything had already been arranged, and all that was left was to wait for the actors to come onto the stage. Who would have known that all of them would die on the way here? They are truly too weak. Hubby, it's all right, don't be angry anymore. Qingya placed her hands onto her husband's shoulders and lightly massaged them. The Empress even sat at the side and peeled fruits for Yi Hua. The Empress looked just like she was coaxing a child. However, being served by the most beautiful woman in the world, Yi Hua felt slightly better. As expected, a woman's tenderness is the best thing to put out the fire. Looking at the gloomy expression on her husband's face, Qingya and Donghuang Baiji really wanted to laugh. Last night they were still discussing their lines. They had even thought of the poses they should take. In the end they were stood up today. How could they not be angry? Yi Hua, do you think that they will pin the crime on Voidless Realm? Donghuang Baiji peeled off the skin of the grape, then brought it to her husband's mouth. Yi Hua enjoyed the Empress's service and said gravely, Of course I will. Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable. If he was the one who killed them, he definitely wouldn't say anything. But now they were all dead before they could even reach him. He didn't even have the chance to act cool. Feeling that the other party had turned the tables, he was very unhappy. Thinking about how he had been sitting outside in the wind for a few hours, his mood became even worse. Then what is the purpose of them doing this? Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. However, in her heart she wasn't too worried. My husband is so formidable, I only have to stand at the side and shout 666, then put on a look of worship. Don't men like their women to be like this? Then I will just satisfy my husband. What else can it be? To make Voidless Realm the public enemy of the entire world. Qingya said eerily, and a cold flash could be seen flashing past her eyes. Voidless Realm is truly a group of people who harbor evil intentions. Become the public enemy of the entire world. Yi Hua didn't think of this point. If I really become the public enemy of the entire world, wouldn't there be even more people coming to die? I feel that Qingya's idea is pretty good. Then let's just become the public enemy of the entire world. Let's gather tens of millions of people to come to Voidless Realm. These people are too bad, Donghuang Baiji shouted out. Yi Hua took a glance, then said, And they are too bad. Hubby, do you have any good ideas? Donghuang Baiji asked coquettishly. With such a powerful man protecting her, Donghuang Baiji naturally had to appear weak and frail so that her husband's vanity would soar. Yi Hua still didn't know that as long as they had a request, they would say husband to the left and husband to the right, and if they didn't have a request they would call him Yi Hua, Yi Hua. Yes. Yi Hua said calmly, seeming as if everything was within his grasp, and he had an appearance of having the entire world in his hands. Qingya and Donghuang Baiji listened attentively. We just have to wait, the conspiracy will naturally appear. Yi Hua didn't want to take the initiative to attack. If he did that, he would seem very brainless. Are we going to wait for others to come up to us? Donghuang Baiji felt that her husband only wanted to show off and he didn't care about anything else. Qingya understood Yi Hua very well. By remaining silent, Qingya could also be considered as supporting Yi Hua in disguise. Yi Hua said in a low voice, No matter how big a conspiracy is, there will come a day where it will be exposed. Aren't the two of you curious? That's right, this curiosity can only be filled with lives. In order to frame Voidless Realm, God raising heaven and earth used 300,000 lives. In actuality, in Yi Hua's eyes, this number of lives wasn't anything. In the past he had seen people who were even more inhumane. There were even people who used the lives of millions of people to create weapons. Would Qingya and Donghuang Baiji still dare to resist Yi Hua? It was obviously impossible. In this family, Yi Hua's words were the law. However, on the second day, a ferocious storm immediately engulfed the entire world. This was a public criticism conference. And that was, Voidless Realm cruelly killed 300,000 people. Their methods were extremely ferocious. In the past, it was always kept a secret and only the people within the circle of power would know about it. However, this time it was directly made public. In fact, a lot of people didn't even know what Voidless Realm was, and yet they actually killed 300,000 people. This is too ferocious, right? The ignorant onlookers immediately pinned a big hat onto Voidless Realm. With just a crusade on the internet, such a ferocious place should have been burned down. However, this wasn't the end of targeting Voidless Realm. Among them, Voidless Realm's rule was exposed. Things like exterminating entire families at the drop of a hat, entrapping people at the drop of a hat. In any case, all of the bad things that happened in Voidless Realm were all reported. As for the good things that happened in Voidless Realm, there was even a photo of the Empress on the front page of every big news. This was the first time that the Empress's appearance was revealed to the public, and in an instant she captured the hearts of countless men. She was too beautiful, she was simply too beautiful. Chapter 6:13. But could such a beautiful woman be that kind of executioner? All the men expressed their doubts. However, it was unknown who had actually released the video of the North-South martial arts competition, and it had even been edited to show the cruel side of the Empress to the world. Seeing the Empress order the execution of those who begged for mercy, everyone's hearts were filled with terror. Of course, there was also indignation. How could a woman have so much power? Who gave it to her? However, there were also a great many youths who were attracted by the Empress's cold figure. This was the true aloof goddess who would kill hundreds of people at the drop of a hat. In fact, she had even slaughtered hundreds of thousands. Too domineering. Of course, this was only the minority. Most of the people were calling to boycott Voidless Realm, and there were even some people who were shouting, "Get out of Voidless Realm." This trend was becoming more and more intense, to the point where Voidless Realm wanted to organize their people to attack Voidless Realm once again. When Voidless Realm heard that Voidless Realm was going to attack Voidless Realm quickly come out and surrender. A slogan of, "Down with Voidless Realm," swept through the entire Voidless Realm. I have never heard of such an exceedingly ferocious organization before. Killing 300,000 people in one go. Oh my god. In ancient times, it was normal for two armies to clash, but times were different. 300,000 was a huge number of people. Right now, inside Voidless Realm, Yihua was currently holding onto his tablet and looking at his wife's figure. A feeling of vanity was currently lingering in his heart. "This is my woman, the woman who acts like a spoiled child in my arms every day, you bunch of idiots." Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji were also looking at the news report, and they were angered to the point that their faces were red. As the saying goes, good things don't go out the door, but outside news travels 1,000 miles. Baiji, this cover photo is not bad. It's beautiful. Too beautiful. I, the Supreme Overlord, am truly too happy. Yihua actually laughed out loud, and at this very moment he wished that he could place the Empress on the bed and roll around with her. Donghuang Baiji rolled her eyes at her husband. Why is he still thinking about these things at a time like this? Yihua said with a smile, "Look at this posture of giving the order, this expression of yours. You are really giving me face." Baiji, well done. Very good. Alright, this seems to be the first time that Yihua is praising his wife, and furthermore it is an important praise. Xianxia expressed that she was unhappy. "Why aren't you praising me? We are both your wives, aren't you being too biased?" However, Xianxia was thinking in her heart, in the future I will also do something to make my husband praise me and make my husband feel proud of me. Perhaps Yihua didn't know that by praising the Empress, he had allowed Xianxia to walk down the path of being praised. Perhaps Donghuang Baiji was infected by Yihua. Donghuang Baiji looked at her own photo, then held onto her face and said, "So ugly." Xianxia poked onto the Empress's forehead and said with a smile, "If you are ugly, how am I supposed to live?" "Xianxia, you are much prettier than me." "How is she beautiful? Look at our husband. He loves your cold and arrogant look." "Really? Why do I feel that my husband likes your gentle look?" Yihua squinted his eyes and took a look. "Woman, sure enough, they all had the heart to compare." Yihua took a look at the news report and felt that it was pretty good. "Scolding is everywhere, this feels great, I am very happy. I just don't know if they dare to make a move. Should I help them?" This question. Seeing that her husband was in deep thought, the two women asked curiously, "Yihua, what are you thinking about?" "Nothing much. Right now we have already become the target of a crusade." Sigh. Donghuang Baiji let out a light sigh. Originally, Voidless Realm's existence was to protect the North, but in the end they were framed to such a state. It would be a lie if you say that it isn't painful. If Father were to find out about this, he would definitely jump up and beat me up. Thinking back to the past, ever since Voidless Realm and Yihua buried the hatchet, Voidless Realm began to fall, and I also fell along with it. This bad man, he only knows how to lead his wife astray, to the point that even I like to act cool now. Look at this cover, it is so cool. As expected, I won't let my husband lose face. Qingyu was a bit envious. I have to think of a way to become famous as well. How can I become famous? Yihua laughed lightly. This can also be considered to be entering the international stage, although this reputation isn't that good. Then, are we still going to sit here and wait? Qingyu asked curiously. Could it be that your majesty still wants to take the initiative to attack? Or are you trying to wash away the suspicion? No matter how you explain yourself now, it will be useless. You can be considered to be wearing the cruel hat. Yihua said lightly. In actuality, this is also good. No one wants to be the bad guy. I, the Supreme Overlord, don't mind being the bad guy. Donghuang Baiji was just saying it. She naturally understood the logic behind it. You two continue chatting. I will go back and take a look at Zhou Xian. After finished speaking, Yihua disappeared. This is truly convenient. I saved quite a bit of money on the bus fare. The poorest Supreme Overlord in history. Returning back to Leisure Bar, Yihua walked into Yu Tong's room. Yizizi was eating chicken every day and Zhou Xian was still lying in Yizizi's embrace. Is Zhou Xian feeling a bit better? Yihua sat on his sister-in-law's bed and asked. Your Honor, wait a moment, the final circle is about to begin. Yihua shook his head. Right now Yizizi's gaming addiction is quite big. Originally, Yizizi was about to finish eating chicken every day, but for some reason her head was shot by an AWM. Even Yizizi herself was stupefied. I was actually killed by a sniper. Yizizi hurriedly switched to death replay. I was actually killed at such a far distance. Fuck, he is definitely a cheater. Pouting her small mouth, Yizizi conveniently pinched Zhou Xian's ear to vent her anger. Zhou Xian, who had fainted for so long, had already been pinched by Yizizi. This fellow's injuries are more or less healed and he should be waking up soon. However, it might take a very long time for him to recover his strength. Yizizi said with a grin while pinching onto Zhou Xian's neck. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian was currently like a dead cat. His four limbs were powerless. Give him to me. Yihua took the opportunity to pinch onto Zhou Xian's neck. He decided to return Zhou Xian to them so that Brett wouldn't come over to ask about the situation from time to time. Pinching onto Zhou Xian's neck, Yihua arrived at Dongfang family. There was actually no one in the main hall. Sensing Brett's aura, Yihua reckoned that Brett should be in the backyard. When Yihua arrived at the backyard, he went into a slight daze. Dongfang Yuaner and Guan Yanxin could be seen carefully teaching Brett how to prune branches, and Brett was also very serious. To think that Brett would actually have such a moment, the power of love is truly great. Cough. Yihua coughed lightly. The three beautiful women were startled for a moment and soon after they shouted out respectfully, Your Honor. Yihua tossed Zhou Xian. The pitiful Zhou Xian drew an arc in the air, and Brett hurriedly hugged onto Zhou Xian and shouted out coquettishly, Your Honor. Zhou Xian, who was in a coma, would often be tossed around by people, and in the future he would be in an even more miserable state. Chapter 6:14. After Yihua left, Dongfang Yuana, who was at the side, asked curiously, This? Brett stroked Absolute Heaven's fur and said with a light smile, This is Absolute Heaven. Guan Yanxin cried out in surprise. They had never seen Zhou Xian's original body before. She never thought that the man she liked was actually a cute kitten. So cute. Dongfang Yuan did not feel anything at all. There were even skeletons in the team. Compared to them, Absolute Heaven was much more adorable. Brett also smiled sweetly and said, Yeah, I've never hugged him before. So obedient. I want a hug too. Guan Yanxin said from the side. Zhou Xian usually had a cold expression on his face, causing Guan Yanxin to not dare to tease him. Now she finally had the chance to bully him. Brett was much more magnanimous now, and he passed the cat version of Absolute Heaven to Guan Yanxin. Guan Yanxin hugged it in her arms and exclaimed that it was so cute. As for Absolute Heaven waking up at that time, that would be truly despairing. He would be abused by these three women. Yihua returned back to Leisure Bar once again, and was preparing to make a Chinese jianbing to eat. However, when he walked to the entrance of the alley, he didn't see the auntie selling jianbing, and suddenly he thought of something. Could it be that Wu Li had gone? You didn't listen to my advice? Standing at the entrance of the alleyway, Yi Hua let out a breath. If this Wu Li really left, I reckon that he wouldn't be able to come back. As for aunties, perhaps I won't be able to eat that hot fruit pancake anymore. At this time, the auntie was still waiting for her child to come home. She had been away for a few days, and logically speaking, she should be back soon. In order to wait for her son to come back, the aunt didn't go to set up her stall for the past few days. However, the more she waited, the more anxious she felt. As the days passed by, the old lady also saw the news. Voidless Realm had actually massacred 300,000 people. Although I don't know what Voidless Realm is, I recognize the woman who appeared on the television. Isn't that young man's wife? He had even bought some pancakes from his stall. The middle-aged woman did not think that this woman was a heinous person. She wondered if the report was wrong. After seeing that so many people had died, the big aunt also felt that the world had changed and it didn't seem like a complete world anymore. It was too cruel. Ding dong. Ding dong. Suddenly the doorbell rang. The auntie paused and a smile appeared on her face. It seemed that her son had returned. This isn't right. My son should have the key. Why would he press the doorbell? The middle-aged woman walked to the door, still very vigilant. Who is it? Standing outside was the man who had received the suicide note back then. It had been a few days since he had delivered it. This feeling was really not good, especially when he saw the lifeless eyes of the other party's family members. Moreover, this family was the family of a squad leader. I'm here to deliver a letter, the man shouted from outside. The auntie was even more confused. Were there still people delivering letters in this day and age? Could he be a swindler? That's why he wouldn't open the door. Leave or I'll call the police. The middle-aged woman shouted. Auntie, it's your son's letter, the man shouted again. The middle-aged woman didn't believe it. Her son had never sent a letter. My son will call me if he needs anything. The man let out a light sigh. I can't bear to say that this is a will, but at the very least I have to hand this will over to the other party. Auntie, this is your son's will. A will. The middle-aged woman was shocked. She didn't care if the man was a scammer or not. She opened the door and said, What did you say? How could my son write a will? The man first bowed to the middle-aged woman, then handed over the letter with both of his hands. Auntie, my condolences. The middle-aged woman's gaze stared fixedly at the pure white envelope. She stretched out her trembling right hand, and a bad premonition emerged from the bottom of her heart. Auntie, Captain Wu sacrificed himself for peace and justice, please. The man said gravely, but he wasn't able to finish what he wanted to say. The middle-aged woman didn't hear what the man said at all. Her trembling hand tore open the envelope, took out the letter inside and slowly opened it. At the bottom left corner of the letter, there was even a blood stain. Dear mother, if you read this letter, it means that your son is no longer able to fulfill his filial duties. I'm sorry. When the middle-aged woman saw this line of words, the middle-aged woman felt that the world was spinning, and the man hurriedly held on to her. The middle-aged woman sat on the ground paralyzed. Looking at the words that her son wrote, her tears wetted the letter one by one. When the middle-aged woman finished reading the letter, a mournful wail suddenly broke out. Son, my son, why did you leave your mother alone? The middle-aged woman shouted in pain as she pounded on her chest. The man took a deep breath and squatted down. Auntie, I'm sorry. The middle-aged woman grabbed onto the man's shoulder and shouted out miserably, Tell me, how did my son die? I beg you to tell me. Auntie, you should have seen the report on the news. Captain Wu is inside the report. Captain Wu sacrificed himself for the sake of righteousness. Auntie, you should be proud of your son. No. I don't want to be proud, I only want my son back. Return my son back to me. The middle-aged woman was completely confused as she shook the man with all of her might. Towards this kind of situation, the man had encountered it before, and thus he comforted the middle-aged woman properly. Auntie, quickly enter the house. The middle-aged woman shouted out while crying, That is my son's corpse. Where is his corpse? I'm sorry, everyone's corpse was buried in that desert. After finished speaking, the man turned around and left. At the moment when the elevator door closed, the man heard even more miserable wails coming from outside. Perhaps Yi Hua still didn't know about this matter, but back then he also advised Wu Li to just properly accompany the middle-aged woman and not think about other things. Unfortunately, between happiness and despair, Wu Li still chose despair and left his old mother alone. On this day, Yi Hua was currently teaching his son how to wield a sword. The little fellow Yi Yan had also grown a bit taller, and the sword that he was holding onto was even longer than him. "Hold on to the sword firmly," Yi Hua shouted out gravely. Yi Yan's gaze was very firm. Even though his hands were trembling, he was still holding onto the sword's hilt tightly. Dong Huangli, who was at the side, appeared very calm, looking as if she had been abused by her mother. Yi Hua took a sip of tea, his gaze was calm and he had the appearance of a strict father. Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji sat at the side and began learning how to knit a sweater. From time to time they would turn around and look at their child, and a smile could be seen on the corner of their mouth. This kind of life sure is warm. Right at this moment, Yi Hua received Wei Chang's voice transmission. After hearing it, Yi Hua's brows wrinkled. "Auntie actually came to the bar. This has never happened before in the past. Could it be that? Yi Hua, what's the matter?" Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji felt the change in their husband. After all, it was very rare for Yi Hua to frown, and as long as he frowned, it would be a big matter for him. Thus the two women became confused. Yi Hua took a deep breath. "Auntie came to the bar. Auntie? Is it the auntie who sells crepes at the alley entrance?" Xianxia asked tenderly. Chapter 6:15. "Auntie, what are you doing at leisure bar? What's the matter?" Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yi Hua let out a light sigh, then looked at Donghuang Baiji and said, "Auntie's son is most likely among the 300,000 people, and auntie has also seen you before." With that, the two girls understood that the auntie was here to settle the score. In actuality, I had already tried to persuade her son, but unfortunately, her son still chose a path of no return. Donghuang Baiji felt that she should go and explain to Donghuang Baiji that she and the others did not kill her son at all. "Yi Hua, I will go with you to explain." Yi Hua said faintly, "No need, I can go by myself." Yi Hua felt that it was useless to explain too much. If there was a cause, there would be an effect. This was a fact that could not be changed. I, the Supreme Overlord, am not a good person. I am already doing my best to persuade my beloved wife to explain such a thing to me. With a heavy heart, Yi Hua arrived at Leisure Bar, and Blood Demon was currently waiting respectfully for him. "Your Honor." "Where's he?" Yi Hua asked. Blood Demon lowered his head and said, "Stand outside." "Stand? Why didn't you let her in? How long has it been?" Yi Hua's tone sank. Right now it was currently a thunderstorm. The Blood Demon didn't understand why his honor was angry, but he still lowered his head and said, "It has been 2 days. 2 days? Why didn't you inform me earlier?" Yi Hua hurriedly walked out. To Yi Hua, this ant was the first human that dared to scold him. Of course, she was also the first human that Yi Hua didn't want to kill, and also the first human that Yi Hua got to know. The Blood Demon had a terrified look on his face. His honor actually got angry because of a human. How is this possible? Yi Hua walked to the entrance of Leisure Bar, and sure enough he saw that familiar figure that was currently being drenched by the heavy rain. Yi Hua materialized an umbrella in his hand and walked forward. With a wave of his hand, the ant's clothes that were originally wet became warm. "Why aren't you coming in?" Yi Hua asked gravely. The middle-aged woman looked up at the unfamiliar young man, her eyes devoid of any anger. Only after a long while did he finally ask. His voice was extremely hoarse. "Can you return my son's corpse to me?" Looking at the expectant gaze of the auntie as well as the look of despair on her face, for the first time, Yi Hua had a different feeling. The face of despair wasn't that beautiful anymore. It had already been a few years since Yi Hua got to know the auntie, and what Yi Hua saw the most was the amiable smile on the auntie's face. Even when the auntie was scolding Yi Hua, the auntie's smile was still that kind of gentle. That kind of gentleness would probably never be seen again. Seeing that Yi Hua wasn't speaking, the auntie immediately kneeled down in front of Yi Hua and begged, "I beg of you." Towards humans kowtowing to him, Yi Hua had always felt very comfortable in his heart. However, at this moment Yi Hua was extremely displeased, and an evil aura gushed out from his chest. A desolate scene froze in front of them. A woman was kneeling in front of a young man with her head lowered. The sky was still pouring and it was getting heavier and heavier. It landed on the ground with a rustling sound. Yi Hua tightened his grip on the umbrella and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry." This was Yi Hua's first time apologizing to a human, and this was also Yi Hua's last time apologizing to a human. The rainstorm was still continuing and the auntie slowly stood up. Without taking another look at Yi Hua, the auntie turned around and walked towards the entrance of the alleyway, and the clothes that she was wearing were instantly drenched by the rainstorm. At this moment Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji also jogged out of the house. The two of them leaned against Yi Hua's side and looked at that lonely and desolate back view of Yi Hua, all the way until Yi Hua disappeared from their sight. The pain of losing her son caused the auntie to lose her motivation to live. Yi Hua stood there for a very long time and Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji also accompanied the auntie for a very long time. The two of them were able to sense the emotions that their husband was currently feeling, and they knew that his mood was definitely not good. "Let's go in." After a long time Yi Hua said unhurriedly. After walking into the bar, Yi Hua sat beside the bar counter, and Blood Demon hurriedly poured a cup of wine for Yi Hua. Yi Hua had always been a person who took small sips of wine, but today he took a sip of wine. However, all of this was because of a human auntie. Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji sat beside their husband and accompanied him attentively. Yi Hua let out a breath, then said while wrinkling his brows, "This auntie is the first person who dares to reprimand me. No, there are a lot of people who reprimand me, but all of them are dead. This auntie is the only one who made me." Speaking up to here, a ray of red light flashed past Yi Hua's eyes. "Who am I to blame for all of this? Peace Association, Justice Alliance, or Wu Li himself, or even me?" Hearing this, Blood Demon was also extremely shocked. That auntie actually dares to reprimand his honor. That auntie is actually still alive. That auntie actually dares to reprimand his honor. Yi Hua laughed lightly, however, this laughter contained a bit of self-mockery. "The crepes that this auntie makes is the most fragrant that I have ever eaten. And she is also rather stingy. Every time she would still charge me money. Doesn't she know that me eating at your place is already giving me a lot of face? And she actually still dares to charge me money." Yi Hua smiled and drank another mouthful of wine. Only now did Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji realize that the position of auntie in their husband's heart was actually quite high. This was for sure. If not, why would Yi Hua help a human to teach his son a lesson, and even advise the human not to send his son to die? Exen Ba listened to Exen Ba's advice, but that Wu Li didn't. After drinking a few cups of wine, Yi Hua took a deep breath and said, "This aunt is my first friend and she might also be my last friend." After finished speaking, Yi Hua stood up and walked towards the stairs. "I need to take a nap." Blood Demon lowered his head and remained silent. So his honor is still so emotional. Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji understood their husband even more deeply. So Yi Hua actually has such a side to him. I really didn't expect this. The two women followed Yi Hua upstairs, opened the bedroom door, and saw that Yi Hua was already lying on the bed. The two women didn't feel embarrassed. They took off their clothes, snuggled into their husband's embrace and comforted him. That night Yi Hua had a dream. In the dream, the auntie was still selling crepes at the entrance of the alleyway, and the auntie's face that was filled with wrinkles still had that same smile on it, and that auntie was looking at him. The next morning, the rainstorm outside had already stopped, and the sound of raindrops could still be heard coming from the eaves of the house. Yi Hua opened his eyes and returned back to his usual demeanor, then lightly hugged onto his two wives. After hearing that, Yi Hua let out a light chuckle. Two snorts. "Hubby, why don't you sleep for a while longer?" Xianxia asked tenderly. "That's right, you woke up so early." Donghuang Baiji asked lightly with her beautiful eyes closed. Yi Hua said faintly, "I woke up to buy breakfast for you two at the entrance of the alleyway." Speaking of the entrance of the alleyway, Yi Hua recalled what happened yesterday. Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji, who were in Yi Hua's embrace, immediately opened their beautiful eyes. Donghuang Baiji said tenderly, "Hubby, I will go and make breakfast for you. And the two of us will make breakfast together, you go and sleep first." After finished speaking, the two women got up and went to prepare breakfast. Meanwhile, Yi Hua lay on the bed for a while, then put on his clothes, went downstairs and walked out of Leisure Bar. Chapter 616. I almost can't recognize Yi Hua anymore. Donghuang Baiji mumbled. In Donghuang Baiji's heart, Yi Hua's style of doing things had always been iron-blooded, to the point where he wouldn't even give any face to his subordinates, let alone an auntie who was only selling Chinese crepes. Xianxia said lightly, Perhaps it's because we still don't know enough. In actuality, Xianxia had known Yi Hua for a slightly longer time than Donghuang Baiji. In Xianxia's heart, Yi Hua was an extremely cold and indifferent man, and it was to the point that Xianxia even had a kind of feeling that Yi Hua didn't like people. However, every time Xianxia followed Yi Hua to the alleyway to buy breakfast, she would be able to feel that at that moment, Yi Hua would loosen up a bit. Perhaps Yi Hua had treated this auntie as a relative, and only a relative would accept the other party's reprimand. Yi Hua, who walked out of leisure bar, looked towards the entrance of the alleyway, and his gaze immediately became serious. A familiar stall, and even that familiar back view. Yi Hua walked over with large strides. It was unknown what his mood was right now, but in any case, it was the kind that was very complicated. However, when he walked closer, he discovered that he had actually seen wrongly. This was indeed an auntie, but she was no longer the auntie from before. However, the cart was exactly the same. "Hey handsome, do you want one?" The woman selling pancakes turned her head and asked with a smile. Yi Hua's face sank, and soon after he shook his head. "No need." With the change of people, the popularity of the fruit pancake was also taken away. The woman smiled and said nothing. After a short while, Yi Hua asked, "What about the person who sold the medicine here earlier?" The woman turned around and smiled. "Oh, you mean Zhou Xian? She sold this tool to me. I heard she even sold her house. She seems to have returned to her hometown." Zhou Xian. So this aunt's name is Zhou Xian. After so many years, I only found out today that this name is very nice to hear. In the future, don't set up a stall at the entrance of this alley. Yi Hua shouted out coldly. The woman immediately wrinkled her brows, and when she came into contact with Yi Hua's bone-piercingly cold gaze, she immediately got a fright. Muttering that he was sick, she hurriedly pushed the cart and left. Yi Hua took out a stick of cigarette and looked at the familiar position. It was as if he could hear an auntie saying beside his ear, "Young man, you have to pay for the extra egg." After finishing smoking the cigarette, Yi Hua extinguished the cigarette. It seemed like he had also extinguished the past that was hard to come by. At the moment when Yi Hua turned around, Yi Hua was still that supreme overlord. Those who complied would still have a sliver of hope for survival. Rebel. He could only go to hell to repent. Yi Hua returned to the leisure bar, and Xianxia and Donghuang Baiji came out with congee with pork and century egg. "It's still very hot." Xianxia placed the breakfast in front of her husband. Yi Hua laughed lightly, then picked up the spoon and lightly shook it for a bit, then took a small bite. It was very comfortable. It turned out that his wife's cooking also tasted like this. After enjoying his wife's breakfast, Yi Hua returned back to Voidless Realm together with his wife. I feel that the taste of Leisure Bar has changed a bit. Without the Chinese crepes from the morning, Leisure Bar seems to be incomplete. As for what happened next, it was very simple. They just had to slowly wait for the matter to ferment, and the next time they would be greeted with utter pain and despair. I never joke around. It must be the deepest despair. 1 week's time passed by very quickly, and just like what Yi Hua had expected, the incident of killing 300,000 people had become more and more influential. The banner of eradicating evildoers had even been raised, and demonstrations had appeared all over the place. Voidless Realm had become the most searched term on the internet, and various foreign powers had also started investigating this mysterious Eastern organization. To think that they would actually be so cruel and ruthless. It was a pity that Voidless Realm was located in a desert, and the danger of that place was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Even the exact location of Voidless Realm was not something that could be obtained by ordinary people. Qing Tiandi liked this kind of effect a lot. The bigger the commotion, the better. Those old monsters shouldn't be able to sit and do nothing. After all, Voidless Realm is a good thing. Small world. This is a big treasure. Qing Tiandi took out his Nokia from his pocket and dialed a number with a smile on his face. When the call was connected, Qing Tiandi laughed. "Brother Sin, it's me, Qing Tiandi. Let's meet?" "All right." Qing Tiandi continued to call. "Brother Chu, it's me, Qing Tiandi. Let's meet?" "When?" Chuing asked faintly. "How about Tuesday?" Qing Tiandi laughed. "Oh, I have to go to work." "You can't possibly work overnight, right? Let's do it on Tuesday night." Qing Tiandi laughed. Chuing remained silent for a while, then said, "All right." Qing Tiandi continued to make the third call. "Big Sister Ju, it's me, Tian Tiandi. Let's meet up on Tuesday night, how about it?" From the tone of the call, Qing Tiandi seemed to be a bit low profile. A ghost-like voice rang out from the phone. Tuesday night I have an appointment with someone to play mahjong. Big Sister Jiu, we can play mahjong anytime about Voidless Realm. Jiu Ling remained silent for a while, then said faintly, all right, I'll cancel this game then. I'm really sorry. Qing Tiandi laughed. Jiu Ling responded and hung up the phone. Qing Tiandi continued playing mahjong. Brother Shaon, are you still cooking? Qing Tiandi heard the sound of the stove and the sound of the spatula ringing out from the phone. Shi Xiaotian said impatiently, if you have something to fart then say it. Let's meet up on Tuesday night. I'm not free. Don't worry, I won't disturb your brother Shaoan cooking. However, right at this moment, the manager's scolding voice rang out from the phone, and even Qing Tiandi heard it. Shi Xiaodong. How long do you take to cook? Do you not want to work anymore? Coming right away, coming right away. Shi Xiaotian said gravely, let's talk about it when the time comes. Hearing the busy tone that came out from the phone, Qing Tiandi shook his head helplessly. These old monsters really can't sit still. I have to invite them one by one. Don't they know how to do it themselves? One is more and more crafty than the other. It is only I, Qing Tiandi, who is too naive. Right now, Li Hun, who had reincarnated, cut a man's neck, and a young lady was so frightened that she hid at the corner of the wall. There isn't a single good thing in men. Do you know? You have to rely on yourself. Li Hun shouted lightly towards the shivering young lady. Shaking off the blood on the knife, Li Hun walked out of the house. These few days I have already killed a lot of men. Killing is especially satisfying. In any case, as long as I see other people being sweet and affectionate, I will know that that man definitely doesn't have good intentions. Kill. Seeing other people quarreling, scumbag. Kill. In any case, I am going to kill all the bad men in the world. Men are not good things. Other than lying to others, there is nothing else. Li Hun's current state of mind was the typical one that couldn't bear to see other people doing well. Why can other people be more fortunate than me? Just for the sake of satisfying myself by killing everyone. But right now, killing ordinary people is no longer enough to satisfy Li Hun's needs. Even though I am so strong, I have still been deceived by men. If I want to kill, I must kill strong men. That way I can save more women. Beauty, it is very dangerous for you to stand at the side of the road. Dou Fushi looked at Li Hun, who was in a daze, and shouted. This woman is really beautiful. Chapter 6:17. Li Hun took a glance at Dou Fushi, then turned around and left. Why didn't he kill Dou Fushi? That was because Dou Fushi did not have a girlfriend by his side. If there was a girl by his side, Li Hun would definitely kill all the heartless men in the world. Dou Fushi should be glad that he does not have a girlfriend, right? However, after seeing Li Hun leaving, Dou Fushi did not have the intention to strike up a conversation with her. Dou Fushi's current action had undoubtedly saved his life once again. If he had gone to strike up a conversation with her just now before he could even shout for help, he would have been killed by Li Hun. Dou Fushi had unintentionally saved his life twice. Dou Fushi, who turned around and left, muttered, I did a divination today and my life is in danger. Seems like I have to be careful and not get hit by a flower pot. I have to be careful when crossing the road and not get hit by an electric bike. I am Dou Fushi, a gold raider. How can I die? Hee hee. In the blink of an eye, it was already Tuesday night. Qing Tian appeared on a street that was filled with midnight snacks, casually found a table outside and sat down, then began ordering. Although the world had changed, eating skewers for midnight snacks had never changed. Enjoying delicious food was a kind of enjoyment. This streaky pork is not bad. Give me another 20 RMB. Qing Tian shouted. He felt that it was not bad. Sure, give me another taste of beer. Okay, coming right up. While eating the skewers, Qing Tian leisurely waited. Suddenly, a fat man sat down. This man's fat was not fat, he was muscular and sturdy. He was the chef Shi Xian. Damn, why did you call me here? Shi Xian took out a bottle of beer and directly bit open the bottle cap with his teeth, then raised his head and started drinking. Then he grabbed the skewers and started eating, causing the surrounding people to sigh, but they did not dare to do anything. This Shi Xiaoyan's physique was truly a bit scary. Brother Xiaon, don't be anxious, there are still a few people. Qing Tian smiled. Shi Xiaotian snorted and continued eating. Not long later, a woman who wore a white big round hat and a noble white evening dress leisurely walked over, causing the surrounding men to be dumbstruck, and some even whistled. The woman didn't seem to mind. She even winked at the drunk men teasingly. Sister Nine, you're here. Have a seat. Qing Tiandi was also very polite and personally set up a chair for Jiuling. Jiuling chuckled. Heaven and earth, you're not stingy today. He made such a big move recently, how can he be stingy? Shi Xiaotian picked his teeth with a bamboo stick. I'm just acting as your vanguard. Just as he finished speaking, a bicycle stopped beside him. Chu Ying arranged her tools and sat down with a smile. She didn't say anything. As soon as Chu Ying sat down, a child carrying a school bag also sat down. Brother Sin. Qing Tian called out with a smile. Children are sins. Although he looked like a child, he was actually very old. Du Zue put his bag aside and picked up the beef tendon to eat. Qing Tiandi, why did you call us here? Qing Tiandi didn't beat around the bush. This little brother has already paved the path for you guys. Voidless Realm is just around the corner. Du Zue ate until the corner of his mouth was filled with grease. He didn't have the demeanor of an expert at all as he said vaguely, you did so much just to force us to come out, right? Of course not, it's been a long time since we got together. Besides, everyone knows about the benefits of Voidless Realm. How could the four of them not know about it? A small world, if it grows up, it will become a big world and they will be the master of that big world. How exciting would that be? However, all experts wanted face, and without a good excuse, they didn't want to do something that would tarnish their reputation. And Qing Tiandi was going to pave the path for them, to openly fight their way into Voidless Realm. This was also the reason why Chu Ying asked Ju Yi to do that, because that small world was truly too tempting. Ju Ling said, Qing Tiandi, what are you thinking of to trick us again? Shi Xiaotian sneered, you're full of evil tricks, I won't believe you. Chu Ying's silence was Kim's philosophy. Big brother, big sister, why don't you all believe in me, Qing Tiandi? If we manage to take down Voidless Realm, wouldn't it be good for us to be the masters of Voidless Realm? Qing Tiandi maintained a smile on his face. Just like what Shi Xiaotian said, he was full of evil tricks. Qing Tiandi, do you think that we don't know what you are planning? Du Zue took out a napkin and wiped his mouth, then casually threw the napkin on the ground. Seeing this action, Qing Tiandi wrinkled his brows, but he didn't say anything. Jiuling took out a pair of sunglasses from her bag. If I had known earlier, I would have gone to play mahjong. It's boring, I'll be leaving first. After finished speaking, Jiuling stood up and left. Shi Xiaotian drank another bottle of beer, then said, I'm going home to study the recipes. Du Zue carried his school bag and said lightly, I still have to go to school tomorrow. In an instant, 3 people left and his first love was still sitting there. Qing Tiandi squeezed out a smile and said, Brother Chu, how about we work together? I still have to wake up early for work tomorrow, bye-bye. Chu Ying stood up and left on her bicycle. Looking at Chu Ying's back view that was getting further and further away, the corner of Qing Tiandi's mouth twitched slightly. His smiling face slowly darkened and a trace of viciousness flashed past his eyes. After a long while, Qing Tiandi also stood up and left. Boss, you still haven't paid the bill? The boss hurriedly chased after Qing Tiandi and wanted to stop him. But before his hand could even touch Qing Tiandi's clothes, the boss was sent flying, and it was unknown whether the boss was dead or alive. Even the shop assistant didn't dare to chase after Qing Tiandi rashly. This man is a bit scary. However, if one were to observe carefully, a trace of an arc appeared on the corner of Qing Tiandi's mouth. High up in the night sky, the 4 people who just left were standing in the sky. This Qing Tiandi is still the same as before. Du Zue sneered. Jiuling laughed tenderly. Doesn't that mean that he still wants to scam us? Shi Xiaotian pinched his neck and said eerily, I really want to wring his neck off. His plot didn't succeed, so he vented his anger on the boss. He really hasn't changed. Chu Ying chuckled. In fact, the 5 of them had cooperated before, but Qing Tiandi was trying to scam them, so the 4 of them didn't want to have anything to do with him. Sometimes they even couldn't help but fight with him. However, they came from the same place and could be considered fellow countrymen. Killing one of them would mean one less. This time we'll do it ourselves. Du Zue grinned. Qing Tiandi had done so much to pave the way for them, so there was no need for him to intervene. Chapter 6:18. When do we make our move? Chu Ying asked in a low voice. Right now, everything was ready and they could make their move at any time. Du Zue looked towards the direction of Voidless Realm, then said, There is no time like the present. Since we have already come out, let's make our move tonight. Sure, Xiaotian and Jiuling, who were at the side, nodded. Since they had already come out, they might as well finish what they had to do. Did they still have to choose an auspicious day? They didn't believe that. Meanwhile, in the middle of the desert outside of Voidless Realm, there was currently a bonfire, and there were a few people sitting around the bonfire. From time to time, those people would let out laughter. Wife, grill a chicken wing for me. Right now, Yihong was rather manly. He was actually able to order Zishan, who was beside him, to grill a chicken wing for him. Zishan smiled gently and said, "All right, I'll grill some chicken wings for you." LV Liang smiled at the side and didn't say anything. This is all because Zishan is giving me face. Once I go back, this little brother of mine will become a coward. Death Mage was sitting beside him. Sun Fong was not present today. After eating his wife's grilled chicken wings, Yihong sighed softly. "Uncle Wei, why did you ask us to take turns to guard this place? Could it be that someone else is coming?" Zishan took out a tissue and passed it to her husband. Yihong smiled as he took the tissue and wiped his lips. Zishan said, "Uncle Wei might have also received his honor's order to prevent anyone from launching a sneak attack on us. Then, if someone is really going to launch a sneak attack on us, then his honor's prophecy is truly incredible." LV Liang sighed with emotion, and within his mind his honor's tall and sturdy figure appeared, and a blazing heat could be seen emitting out from his gaze. Death Mage let out a cold laugh. "His honor is a supreme overlord. How can we compare with his intelligence?" "There's nothing wrong with what Master Spellcaster said," Yihong said with a grin. "The reason why his honor is able to lead such a powerful team is all because of his own capabilities." Zishan laughed. "All of you are just a bunch of bootlickers. For example, I am his honor's brainless fan. His honor is so handsome." Facing his wife's limitless worship of his honor, Yihong asked curiously, "Then is his honor more handsome, or am I, your husband, more handsome?" Zishan poked onto her husband's forehead unhappily. "Aren't you talking nonsense? It's definitely because his honor is handsome." Yihong felt as though a sharp sword had stabbed into her chest. It was so painful. LV Liang laughed out loud. "What you are doing is called masochism. I would never ask this kind of question, and yet, you are actually competing with his honor in terms of handsomeness. Little brother, you sure have guts." Yihong also discovered that she had misspoken. "I actually became so arrogant that I want to compare my looks with his honor. I'm ashamed." He silently prayed for his honor to spare his life. LV Liang took a look at the time. It was almost midnight. "It's time to change shifts." "That's right, it has been a long time since I last fought." "Someone really comes, then hurry up and come." Zishan's hands were clearly a bit itchy. It was no longer interesting for her to abuse her husband at home every single day. Yihong said in a low voice, "Honey, haven't you hit me enough at night?" Zishan said casually, "If you are able to make my stomach become big, do you think that I would need to hit you?" "This isn't my fault," Yihong said embarrassedly. Speaking of which, it has already been a few months, but Zishan is still not pregnant yet. Could it be that it is that difficult for a deity to get pregnant? His honor's wives are already pregnant with their second child, and I didn't even get to see a single fart. Speaking of children, Zishan became angry. "If it's not your fault, then whose fault is it? You aren't even willing to work overtime." "I'm just worried about you." "What worried about me? From what I see, you just don't want to have children." "When did I? Look. You aren't even irritated anymore." The husband and wife immediately started scolding each other. Zishan was the main attacker while Yihong was the one who explained. Death Mage and LV Liang turned around and shook their heads helplessly. Death Mage thought to himself, "Fortunately, I am a skeleton and I can't shoot anything at all." Meanwhile, LV Liang thought to himself, "The blood race sisters didn't even mention about having children at all. If they are pregnant, then just raise them. If they are not pregnant, then it doesn't matter either." Right at this moment, 4 figures appeared at the side. To be more precise, there were only 3 figures, and one of them was a husky. "Sister-in-law, greetings." The 4 people stood up and greeted respectfully. The 3 people who came were Lai Gu's 3 wives, Yi Wenxia by Xiaozhen, and of course there was also that Yin Lang who stuck out his tongue. Lai Gu's identity in the team belonged to his honor's direct subordinate, and his status was outstanding. Thus, his wife's status naturally rose as well. However, Yi Wenxia and Bai Xiaozhen were still very amiable. They did not become arrogant because of their status, because they understood that if it wasn't for Lai Gu, It would be impossible for them to be standing here and serve the Supreme Overlord. This time they took the initiative to participate in the mission not for anything else, but because they wanted to bring honor to their husband and let his honor praise them. As a wife, this was something that was necessary. That's why these 3 women are all smart women. If not, how would they be able to obtain Lai Gu's affection? Lai Gu was very picky. In the past he would often change his female dragons, and now it has already been a year and it was still the same 3. From the looks of it, these 3 women had already charmed Lai Gu. You all quickly go back and rest, leave this place to us. He laughed lightly. In actuality, things like staying up all night can be handed over to other people, it's just that they took the initiative to request it. Sister-in-law, thank you for your hard work. Elvi Liang cupped her hands and said with a smile. After all, after acknowledging Lai Gu as his big brother, his hairstyle was split in the middle and he looked very handsome. However, just as everyone was about to change shifts, an enormous spiritual pressure appeared in the sky. The 7 people and the husky looked up at the sky, and excitement could be seen in their eyes. They really came. His honor is so powerful. He was even able to guess this. The 4 people who came were naturally Du Zue, Jiuling, Chu Ying and Shi Shaoan. The 4 people stared at the bonfire, and of course the people beside the bonfire also had puzzled gazes. Why would these people appear here? Shi Shaotian asked curiously. However, he wasn't afraid, he was simply curious. Jiuling laughed lightly. There's even a dog, how interesting. There's also a skeleton, humph. Du Zue said coldly. Chu Ying asked puzzledly, is that the black gown? So what if it's the black gown? They are nothing more than a group of women. Du Zue said indifferently. He seemed very calm and didn't panic in the slightest. The 4 people in the sky were very calm and collected. The 7 people below were no longer calm and collected. Sister-in-law, look, it isn't time to change shifts yet, how about you all sit down and rest? Zishan said hurriedly. It wasn't easy for people to come and cause trouble for us, so how about we let them go? Not only are we able to fight, we will also be able to obtain his honor's praise. This is simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone. With a light smile on her face, when Xia said unhurriedly, Zishan, since you called us sister-in-law, you should listen to sister-in-law and go back and rest properly. You can just leave the matters here to sister-in-law. So incisive. Even Yunlang, who was at the side, nodded his head vigorously. No matter what, I came out from Voidless, and before I even had the chance to show off my might, I was completely oppressed by Big Sister. Now that the opportunity is here, how can I let it go? Chapter 619. Elvi Liang wouldn't let go of such a rare opportunity. She took out her mobile phone and pointed at the time. Sister-in-law, look, it's 11:59. It's not 12 yet. Bai Xiaozhen was still the same as before. She was a bit shy and said softly, Elvi Liang, jump. It jumped? Elvi Liang didn't react for a moment. She then looked at the time. It turned out that it had jumped to 12 o'clock. *CK, how could this be? Yihong had to fight for her wife. Sister-in-law, look, these people all came before 12 o'clock. Let us do it. Sisters-in-law, go back and accompany Big Brother. I'll keep watch tonight. Zishan felt very comfortable when she heard these words. Her husband knows that he is thinking for me. She flicked her hair that was messed up by the wind and said softly, Yihong, Zishan, didn't you too want to have a child recently? Hurry up and go back and give birth to your child. You can leave this matter to sister-in-law. Seems like this doesn't make sense. The 7 people immediately started a nervous debate. Yunlang really wanted to say, I want to fight for it too. You all can't treat me like a dog, I also have human rights. The 4 people in the sky naturally heard their conversation, and their expressions turned ugly. They were actually arguing about such a thing. If they had the guts, they should attack together. Truly a bunch of people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Shi Shaotian twisted his thick neck and immediately released a wave of evil energy. It actually took on a physical form, and the yellow sand was disintegrated by this evil energy. It was indeed very powerful. The 7 people arguing below became even more excited. Wow, so awesome, so cool. I will do it. I will do it. Ignorance is human nature. I like these people even though there's no sense of accomplishment in killing them. Jiuling said indifferently, her beautiful eyes filled with killing intent. The child, Du Zue, revealed a mocking smile. What a fool. On the ground, Yunlang barked wildly at the 7 debating people. Woof, 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 Imperial translation. They are scolding us, and they are even scolding us for being stupid. Yi Hong suddenly thought of an idea and suggested, "Sister-in-law, why don't we each take a step back? The other party has 4 people and we'll each send 2 people. How about that?" Upon hearing Yi Hong's suggestion, everyone felt that it was feasible. He still nodded on behalf of the class, which meant that he agreed. Yi Hong's idea was to let his wife vent her anger so that she wouldn't take it out on him every day. "Big brother, help me please." Yi Hong begged LV Shu to give this opportunity to Zhou Xian. If not, she would definitely not have a good time. Of course, LV Liang knew his little brother's pain. He patted Yi Hong's shoulder and said, "Little brother, I know your pain." When Yi Hong heard this, she felt wronged. Zhou Xian is simply becoming more and more domineering. Zhou Xian is simply riding on me every single day. "Big brother, you are my real big brother." Yi Hong was very touched. Big brother was the best. "Sai, you have to work harder as well and satisfy Zhou Xian's request. After that, her attention will be placed on the child." Yi Hong nodded. She also wanted to, but she just couldn't get pregnant. Did she have to go to an andrology hospital? He did not know which one was better. Death Mage, who was at the side, condensed a death scythe in his hand, and under the illumination of the moonlight, a cold glint flashed across the death scythe. Needless to say, Death Mage and Zhou Xian would definitely be the ones to fight. Zhou Xian excitedly hugged onto her husband and gave him a French kiss. After that, she walked out of the room with a satisfied look on her face. LV Lu said with a smile, "Look, as long as you satisfy a woman, she will be completely obedient to you." Yi Hong felt that there was nothing wrong with Zhou Xian's decision. Zhou Xian was already very happy just now. I have to continue making Zhou Xian happy in the future. In another class, the 3 women were discussing with each other and Yun Lang was directly ignored. Yun Lang squatted at the side and let out a low groan of grievance. "I, Yun Lang, also want my human rights. I also want to fight. You all can't do this. I want to report." As the big sister, she gave the 2 younger sisters the opportunity out of courtesy. "When Xia Xiaozhen, the 2 of you go and have fun, don't lose his honor's face." "We understand." Death Mage, Zhou Xian, Wen Xia and Bai Xiaozhen could be seen walking out of the room. Du Zue, Jiuling, Chu Ying and Shi Xiaotian descended from the void as well. Looking at the 1 man and 3 women in front of them, Death Mage's appearance was rather intimidating. However, the other 3 women looked extremely weak, as if they would be sent flying with a single slap. Du Zue pointed at Death Mage and hooked his finger, then lightly leaped onto the ground. Death Mage versus Du Zue. Shi Xiaotian clenched his fists, letting out cracking sounds as he shouted towards Bai Xiaozhen, "Beauty, come over and play with me." Bai Xiaozhen pursed her lips, then went to the side to fight with Shi Xiaotian. Bai Xiaozhen versus Shi Xiaotian. An evil smile appeared on the corner of Jiuling's mouth as she pointed at Wen Xia. "Let's play with you then." "Alright." Wen Xia's expression was still as cool as ever and her voice was very cold as well. Wen Xia versus Jiuling. Chuing was definitely going to fight against Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian versus Chuing. "Wife, do your best." Yi Hong placed both of his hands on the side of his mouth and shouted loudly. Zhou Xian turned around and blew a kiss to her husband, then walked to the side to fight with Chuing. For battles were about to begin. First battle. Death Mage versus Du Zue. The 2 stood on the pitch-black ground of yellow sand, and spiritual pressure that could make people feel fear was being emitted from their bodies. Even the mutated animals in the surroundings didn't dare to get close to them. From this, it could be seen that this Du Zue was a very relaxed person. Without strength, how could he possibly come and fight against Voidless Realm experts? Furthermore, there were only 4 of them. However, Death Mage wasn't a benevolent person either, and the scythe of death that was in his hand was emitting a terrifying aura. "Lowly outsider, today I Du Zue shall help you." For Du Zue, who was carrying a school bag, to say such a thing was indeed a bit strange. Death Mage, GGG. Imperial translation, "You little trash." Du Zue naturally didn't understand what Death Mage meant. Du Zue sneered, then immediately emitted out his aura, causing a gale to howl, and the spiritual pressure to increase explosively. The black robe that was on Death Mage's body fluttered madly, and his pair of bony feet sunk deep into the yellow sand. Du Zue stretched out his small palm and placed his right hand on his left wrist, then shouted out explosively, "I'll send you to hell." Boom. A white light could be seen shooting out from Du Zue's palm, which immediately illuminated the dark world. The huge spiritual pressure split the yellow sand into 2. Death Mage stared fixedly at the incoming white light. The scythe of death that was in Du Xue's hand was immediately stabbed into the yellow sand, and a huge black barrier appeared in front of Death Mage. Suddenly, the white light collided with the black barrier, causing a loud sound to ring out. Yi Hong and the others couldn't help but turn their heads around and take a look at the black barrier. The battle has already started so quickly, look at them, they are still chatting with each other. The black barrier was able to withstand the attack without any difficulty. This caused Du Xue's brows to wrinkle. Then Du Xue transformed into a meteor, and his small fist immediately smashed onto the black barrier. Crack! Cracks appeared on the black barrier like it was made of glass. Frightening spirit qi immediately spread out and a wave of qi immediately spread out. This Du Xue was actually able to destroy Death Mage's black barrier with a single punch. From this, it could be seen that Du Xue's strength was rather terrifying. Chapter 620. Humph! You dare to use such insignificant skills in front of me, Du Xue? Du Xue shouted out in disdain. However, right after he finished speaking, a silver light descended from the sky. Du Xue's eyes narrowed and a long and thick rod appeared in his hands. Death's scythe and the rod collided. Bang! A loud sound reverberated throughout the world, and a ring of light spread out in all directions which actually caused a sandstorm. Du Xue raised the thick rod in his hands and laughed lightly. You have a bit of strength, but it is not enough. GGG, Imperial Translation. Where did you get your confidence from? Death Mage's bone finger immediately emitted an electric light, which was then transferred to his scythe. It could be seen with the naked eye that Du Xue's rod was conducting electricity. Zizi, a terrifying electric current flashed across Du Xue's body, and one could even see Du Xue's skeleton. Du Xue's entire body was emitting smoke and was trembling violently. Looking at it from afar, Du Xue looked a bit like a primary school student in a bar. Du Xue was dancing and had an afro. A green smoke was emitted from the top of Du Xue's head, and there was also a smell of roasted fur. The smell was very uncomfortable. However, Du Xue didn't seem to be affected much. Instead, his expression became even more ferocious, and he tightly held onto the rod in his hands. You actually injured my body. Du Xue muttered to himself. It has been a long time since I received such an injury, and I was actually injured by a puny outsider. Overlord boom. Du Xue could be seen raising the rod in his hands high, and the rod immediately emitted a terrifying pressure, causing the surrounding air to instantly boil and distort. The original metal rod also revealed its true form, and it was completely golden. As expected of a nouveau riche. Du Xue's gaze locked onto Death Mage and the golden rod in his hands descended. However, in the instant that the rod descended, the rod actually became bigger and it was really thick and long. Before the rod even landed on the ground, the spiritual pressure had already split the yellow sand apart. Death Mage silently looked at the rod that was descending towards him. Of course, he wouldn't use his strength to fight against the rod. Last time when he fought against Xiao Yi, he learned a bloody lesson. Fortunately, my master was merciful and revived me. I won't make this kind of mistake twice. Alright, this will be the last time. Forget it, the opponent's strength was more than a level higher than Xiao Yi's. The golden club smashed down towards Death Mage along with blazing flames, and a ray of red light flashed past Death Mage's empty eyes. GGG, Royal Translation. Absolute Domain. Suddenly, a strange formation covered the yellow sand, making everyone gasp in amazement. Damn, the Master Mage is so strong. LV Liang exclaimed. Yi Hong also muttered, yeah, I feel like no one is a match for it under this absolute domain. Everyone at the side still tacitly agreed. Could be seen that Death Mage was indeed very powerful. The husky that was squatting on the side licked its feet in boredom. I want human rights. In the middle of the stage, a gigantic golden rod descended from the sky. Death Mage did not dodge the attack and just stood there. He did not even bother to defend himself. Die, alien! Du Xue shouted angrily. The child's voice suddenly became old and carried a cold wind with it. Bang! The golden cudgel had indeed smashed down, but it was shattered into pieces. The cudgel turned into specks of starlight in front of Du Xue's astonished eyes, and rose into the night sky. What is going on? Du Xue looked at the skeleton not far away in disbelief. He had clearly hit it. How could this be? Du Xue looked at his own hands with a confused expression. This was the first time such a strange thing had happened. GGG, Imperial Translation. Little trash, kneel down before this master mage. Boom. Du Zue felt a tremendous spiritual pressure coming towards him, and his expression immediately turned sinister, and his legs began bending. Ha! Du Zue shouted out angrily, and an even greater amount of spiritual energy emerged from his body to resist against the spiritual pressure. The skin on Du Zue's face began falling off bit by bit, and his delicate skin also began degenerating, revealing wrinkles. In just a few moments, Du Zue had turned into a short and small old man. Du Zue's current appearance almost made Death Mage vomit. This is 2F** King disgusting. There are only a few strands of hair on Du Zue's head, his back is hunched and his teeth are all incomplete. Coupled with that sinister face of his, Death Mage looks extremely disgusting. If it was possible to vomit, Death Mage would definitely vomit without any hesitation. I will kill you. I will kill you, alien. I will use your bones to annihilate evil. Du Zue roared towards the sky, and the layer of black clouds in the sky immediately dispersed, revealing a sky full of stars. Kill! Du Zue shouted out angrily. Cold stars could be seen flickering in the starry sky, and Death Mage raised his head and looked at the stars. From the looks of it, Du Zue still doesn't know what kind of situation he is in. The cold stars in the sky could be seen descending rapidly, and those were countless blades that brought along a scorching aura as they descended. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Blades that were formed by spiritual energy landed on the ground of yellow sand, and immediately beautiful patterns were formed. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but brighten up. Looking at this scene, Alvi Liang couldn't help but say, "This move is pretty good for proposing." Yi Hong, who was at the side, silently nodded her head. Yi Hong still smiled and said, "Do you men really know how to be so romantic?" From the looks of it, what Yi Hong said revealed Lai Gu's true nature. Right now, Du Zue was gasping for breath as he slightly raised his head and looked at Death Mage. Die. Countless blades that were formed from spiritual energy instantly aimed at Death Mage, and the blades that were formed from spiritual energy attacked towards Death Mage while emitting the aura of death. A shocking might shook the world and everyone couldn't help but gasp. Death Mage let out a strange laughter once again. GGG, Imperial Translation. Let me show you what is called absolute comprehension. Death Mage slowly raised his hand. Damned alien, I won't accept your surrender. Du Zue shouted coldly. This damned alien dared to show off in front of him. Death Mage ignored Death Mage and placed his thumb and middle finger together. This scene made Alvi Liang and Yi Hong's jaws drop slightly. Holy shit. Even mages have learned his honor's unique way to act cool. Snap my fingers. Alvi Liang was dumbstruck. In actuality, I also want to act cool like this. This is too interesting. Yi Hong also had a look of envy on her face. She didn't have Death Mage's style and only knew how to use his fists to solve problems. Du Zue narrowed his eyes and looked puzzled. What was this alien trying to do? Death Mage lightly snapped his fingers, and the countless spiritual chi swords instantly stopped moving. The corner of Du Zue's mouth twitched and he even rubbed his eyes. How is this possible? Was it an illusion? However, this was not the end. All the spiritual energy blades turned around at this moment and pointed at Sin Expiation. GGG, Royal Translation. In absolute comprehension. I am God. However, Du Zue could not understand Death Mage's language at all. He was stunned by the scene in front of him. Boom, boom, boom. Countless spiritual chi swords attacked towards Du Zue. Immediately, a dazzling white light burst out from the spiritual chi swords and soared straight into the sky. Chapter 621. If there were no other factors, it would be quite beautiful. Gradually, the darkness shrouded the earth again. Du Zue was lying on the ground, gasping for breath. There were many bloody wounds on his body, but he was not dead. From this, it could be seen how strong Death Mage was. Death Mage was also a bit absent-minded. He actually didn't die. Interesting. He threw out a black shackle and bound Du Zue, waiting to be dealt with. Damned outsiders. Why are you so strong? Du Zue was still unwilling to accept this reality. How could his ultimate move be used against him? This was unheard of. Death Mage took out his phone and typed a few words before showing it to Du Zue. It's not that I'm too strong, it's that you're too weak. Puff. Zue couldn't help but vomit out a mouthful of blood. I didn't expect that there would be such a terrifying existence in this world. If I had known that it would be like this. Suddenly, Zue seemed to think of something. Heaven and earth pillar, I'm going to kill you. Only now did Zue realize that he had fallen into heaven and earth's trap. Bastard. It seemed that he already knew about the situation here and deliberately said that tonight. He wanted them to come here and court death. At this time, Qing Tiandi was eating instant noodles and watching If You Are the One when he sneezed. Yi Zichen muttered, "It's already spring and it's still so cold, I have to wear more clothes." Shi Xiaoan versus Bai Xiaozhen. Shi Xiaotian, who was standing on the sand dune, revealed a playful smile. Such a delicate woman was just like a weak animal. He could easily strangle her to death. "Kneel down and kowtow to Brother Xiaoan and I'll spare your life." Shi Xiaotian twisted his thick arms. With a height of 2 meters coupled with his physique, he looked like a small mountain in front of Bai Xiaozhen. Because she was on the night shift, Bai Xiaozhen wore a long down jacket. But now she took off the down jacket and wore sportswear inside. Her arrogant figure was immediately exposed to the air. This caused Shi Xiaoan to be slightly stunned, and then he said with a smile, "What? Trying to seduce my brother Xiaotian? It's useless. I have no interest in you." Bai Xiaozhen slowly raised her arm, pointed her finger at Shi Xiaoan, and then crooked her finger. This was blatant teasing. Shi Xiaotian sneered. He had never seen such an audacious woman before. He roared in anger. His body immediately emitted a golden light and thick blue veins popped out of his skin. His muscles also began to swell. Looking at him now, Shi Xiaotian looked like he was made of stone. Every muscle on his body was so explosive as if they were made of carbon fiber. His huge fists seemed like they could shatter anything in the world. Although such a muscular man was huge, he would definitely be welcomed by young ladies, especially those who liked muscular men. "I really can't bear to shatter your body. But who told you to anger me?" Shi Xiaotian roared. His right fist sparkled with a golden radiance, bringing with it a boiling hot aura as he punched towards the petite Bai Xiaozhen. Bai Xiaozhen was only 168 centimeters tall, but in front of Shi Xiaotian she was too small. His fist was as big as Bai Xiaozhen's face. The violent astral energy blew Bai Xiaozhen's beautiful hair into a mess. Her beautiful eyes were filled with the huge fist. Bai Xiaozhen slowly stretched out her left arm. This action caused Shi Xiaoan to laugh wildly. "You overestimate yourself. Go to hell. Be instantly killed by my strength." Boom. Under the fist, the yellow sand instantly flew into the air and spread outwards. A huge shockwave covered the sky and covered the earth. This was a confrontation of strength. There was no need to haggle over it. But Bai Xiaozhen was developed by Lai Gu. Her strength was also able to destroy the world, causing people to be speechless. Just like the current Shi Xiaoan, that crazed smile on his face had become stiff. Bai Xiaozhen could be seen stretching out her slender index finger and tapping on the huge fist. If the camera zoomed in, one would discover that it was actually her fingernail that tapped on the huge fist. Shi Xiaotian muttered. He was completely unable to react to what was happening. The corner of Bai Xiaozhen's mouth curled up slightly. "My strength is not bad. To actually look down on me, Brother Xiaoan. You have to pay the price for overestimating yourself." A golden light emerged from Shi Xiaotian's skin, and he was like a god that had descended to the mortal world. His stiff face became incomparably malevolent, and he clenched his fists tightly and raised them up high. "You're going to pay a painful price. Go to hell." Shi Xiaotian's fists flourished with golden light, and that scorching aura reverberated in the air, causing people to be filled with fear. From Shi Xiaotian's point of view, if he were to punch down with his fists, he would definitely be able to smash this woman into a meat patty. However, how is a man who raised his fists up high going to protect the treasures on his body? Not only is Bai Xiaozhen's strength great, her speed is also outstanding. Following Bai Xiaozhen's light shout, her slender and beautiful leg swept onto Shi Xiaotian's crotch. Shi Xiaotian, who was preparing to smash down, had his eyeballs about to pop out. "I never expected that this woman would actually play such a dirty trick. I can be considered to have gone through hundreds of battles. All of us have the rules of the underworld. Kicking someone's crotch is simply a child's play." Shi Xiaoan, who had an extraordinary aura just a moment ago, immediately held onto his crotch as if he was a cooked shrimp. "You slut, you actually plotted against me." Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but shout out. Shameless to the extreme. You will definitely receive retribution. Bai Xiaozhen said in a low voice, this is a move to guard against wolves. F***K. I am fighting with you. It's not like I want to sully you. What the hell are you guarding against wolves for? The pain in his crotch caused Shi Xiaotian to sweat profusely. Was that so? I'm sorry, it was just a subconscious action. Bai Xiaozhen's words almost caused Shi Xiaoan to vomit blood from anger. Before Shi Xiaoan could react, Bai Xiaozhen's small fist directly smashed onto Shi Xiaotian's abdomen. The golden light on Shi Xiaotian's abdomen could be seen shattering into pieces. Shi Xiaotian wasn't sent flying. It wasn't that Bai Xiaozhen's strength wasn't enough, rather Shi Xiaotian didn't want Shi Xiaotian to be sent flying. Sneak attack. Shi Xiaoan held onto his crotch with his left hand and held onto his abdomen with his right hand, then directly laid onto the pile of sand. These two blows nearly took Shi Xiaotian's life. After all, Bai Xiaozhen's fists and kicks weren't for show, and it was already a miracle that Shi Xiaoan was still able to speak. I thought that we were going to start fighting. Shi Xiaoan, if you don't follow the rules of the underworld, I'm not going to fight with you anymore, stinky woman. Shameless. Before Shi Xiaotian could even see clearly, his face was slapped by Bai Xiaozhen, and his entire body was sent flying. Bai Xiaozhen's face was ice cold. In this world, other than his honor and my husband, no one else can even think of scolding me. Shi Xiaoan, who was sent flying, laid on the pile of sand, and as if he had been slapped silly, he blankly stared at the starry sky. Shi Xiaotian's appearance was a bit similar to Feng Tian, who was slapped to the point that he became autistic. Chapter 622. Isn't it good for me to be a chef and research on recipes, and I actually came to this damned voidless realm? I must have been possessed by greed and was actually deceived by God raising heaven and earth. Thinking up to here, Shi Xiaotian seemed to have realized something. I fell for God raising heaven and earth's trick again. Bastard. I'll die a horrible death. Bai Xiaozhen slowly walked to Shi Xiaotian's side, then lowered her head and looked at Shi Xiaotian. What are you looking at? I'm going to Before Shi Xiaotian finished speaking, Bai Xiaozhen punched towards Shi Xiaotian's abdomen once again. A hole was punched out from the entire yellow sand. How terrifying. However, Shi Xiaotian is still not dead. He is truly resistant to beatings. No wonder he had the courage to come to Voidless Realm. Bai Xiaozhen grabbed onto Shi Xiaotian's neck and began walking back. Shi Xiaotian was no longer the Xiaotian Ji from just now, he was more like a dead Ji. On the other side, Wuxia versus Zhou Ling. The two women were the kind of women that were one in a million. Even in this kind of weather, Wuxia's body was only wearing a black leather shirt and pants, but the tight-fitting clothes perfectly accentuated her curvaceous figure. She looked very cold and sexy. Zhou Ling, who was standing opposite of Wuxia, looked very arrogant. She was wearing a white evening gown and a white round hat, looking just like a noble lady. Beauty, are you interested in following me? Zhou Ling said with a light smile, the corner of her mouth slightly raised. She's also a rare beauty. Wuxia said coldly, not interested. Sigh, what a pity, I really can't bear to lay my hands on a beauty like you. That is if you can. Wuxia sneered. I haven't fought for a long time, my entire body is itching. Beauty, your tone isn't small, I won't be polite then. Zhou Ling's expression gradually turned cold and two daggers condensed in her hands. With just a look, one could tell that the daggers were not ordinary goods. I won't be polite either. Wuxia's cold look was even more serious than Zishan. Even when facing Lai Gu, Wuxia still had a straight face and rarely smiled. Perhaps it was because of this that Lai Gu liked Wuxia a lot. He liked that cold look of hers, it felt very comfortable and pleasurable. Zhou Ling shouted, and her beautiful figure suddenly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Wuxia and stabbed his dagger towards her neck. However, Zhou Ling's eyes darkened. She immediately sheathed her saber and even abruptly pulled away. He looked at Wuxia in disbelief. Many things had happened in that instant. When Zhou Ling appeared behind Wuxia, her heart was filled with joy. She would be able to kill this cold and elegant woman with a single strike. However, just as she was about to stab into her delicate neck, Zhou Ling suddenly noticed that Wuxia was looking at her, and a sense of danger swept through her body. She didn't think too much about it and immediately distanced herself. Beads of sweat appeared on Zhou Ling's forehead. Just from that moment, Jiu Ling felt the gap between them. This woman could actually discover him. Could be seen that her speed was also very fast and she might even surpass him. When Xia slowly turned around and looked at Jiu Ling, "Are you distancing yourself because you are afraid?" "I'm afraid of you." "What a joke. Are you really not afraid?" When Xia said this, she had already appeared behind Jiu Ling and was even right next to her ear. Jiu Ling's expression changed drastically. Even she didn't notice this ghostly speed. What was going on? How could this woman's speed be faster than mine? The dagger in Jiu Ling's hand drew a beautiful arc in the air. The white round hat on her head was also sent flying by the force and fell onto the yellow sand. When Xia grabbed Jiu Ling's wrist and said softly, "I really can't bear to kill a woman like you." Jiu Ling felt the force from her wrist and couldn't move at all. She immediately attacked with her left hand, but when Xia seemed to know what was going to happen and reached out to grab Jiu Ling's wrist. Jiu Ling's pretty face was filled with panic as her hands were held tightly by Xia. "Ha!" Jiu Ling shouted and a terrifying spiritual energy burst out from her body. It was as if she wanted to use this method to break free from Xia's restraint. But was Xia that weak? She wasn't afraid of Jiu Ling's spiritual pressure at all. "Who are you?" Jiu Ling asked in a low voice. The pain in her wrist caused her to let go of the dagger and fall onto the yellow sand. Xia snorted coldly, "Who am I?" "The person who serves the Supreme Sovereign." After saying that, a terrifying aura burst out from Xia's body. It was as if the entire air was trembling. Puff. Jiu Ling was forced to spit out blood by this terrifying aura. Her beautiful face immediately withered and revealed her original appearance. Looking at Jiu Ling's appearance, Xia said indifferently, "So you're old and can't even compare to me." Hearing this, Jiu Ling spat out another mouthful of blood. Her opponent was so powerful that she couldn't defend against it. She didn't even get to use many of her abilities before she was pinned down. But even if she did, it would be useless. This woman was too powerful. Just this aura alone was enough to make her spit out blood. How could such a person exist? What was wrong with this planet? Xia didn't waste any more time and punched Jiu Ling's abdomen. This punch immediately scattered Jiu Ling's spiritual energy. In layman's terms, this punch had crippled Jiu Ling. At the same time, when Xia let go of Jiu Ling, blood flowed from the corner of Jiu Ling's mouth. Her withered face was filled with fear. She pointed at Xia and shouted, "You woman! How vicious!" "Vicious? You should think that I'm kind and didn't want your life." Xia said coldly. There was not a trace of color in her eyes. After pausing for a moment, Xia said again, "Of course I don't know if you'll be able to live or not, because you'll have to wait for my punishment later." Wait for my punishment? Jiu Ling thought about the Overlord Paramount that Xia mentioned just now. These people are actually the subordinates of the Overlord Paramount. What kind of existence is the Overlord Paramount? Why didn't heaven and earth tell me about this? Or did heaven and earth know about this and did it on purpose? Jiu Ling finally realized that she was tricked by heaven and earth again and became his cannon fodder. This is what vicious means. Xia grabbed Jiu Ling's neck and walked back. "You're still too weak, you didn't allow me to use my full strength." This woman is actually so pretentious. Jiu Ling's lungs were about to explode from anger, but she was helpless and could only let Xia grab her. "Damn you heaven and earth. Even if I die, I'll wait for you at the bridge of helplessness." On the other side, it was Zhou Xian versus Chewing. Zhou Xian rotated her neck and twisted her waist. She even did some stretching exercises and said with a light smile, "I'm just doing a warm-up exercise. You can also do it, but be careful not to get cramps."